Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, Amy, are we ready? 2, 1. Okay, we're ready.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. This is the a work session. This is the Basalt Town Council meeting for Tuesday, October 27, 2020. And, you know, we have the first order of business. We're going to have a work session interview for positions on our Planning and Zoning Commission, P&Z. If I've ever seen it, this is an embarrassment of riches in terms of the quality of these applicants. This is really something. This will be a thrill to talk to everybody and get help on our P&Z. So Susan's going to lead us through a series of questions and discussion. Then we have time scheduled in executive session for later in the meeting to weigh what we heard and kind of make a decision and go forward. So did I miss anything there, Susan?
No, I think that's exactly the right introduction, and I think Pam was going to start us off by doing roll call.
Okay.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks, Bill. We'll go ahead and start roll call. Let's begin with Gary Tenenbaum.
Here.
Bill Infante.
Here.
Thank you, Bill. Glenn Drummond.
Here.
Thank you. David Knight.
Here.
Thank you. Elise Huddle. I see ya. Ryan Slack.
Here.
Thank you, Ryan. And Bill King.
Here.
Thank you. Everyone's present. Thank you, sir.
So what we are going to be doing today is we're going to be interviewing 4 applicants to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And when the council appointed their boards and committees, they decided that because of the importance of the P&Z board, they wanted to bring in potential applicants and get to know the person and interview them yourselves rather than getting a recommendation from the committee itself. So we have advertised the position, and some of these folks that are here today were simply interested in serving on the P&Z, so they have in the past given us their application. So we have 4 individuals, and we're going to interview them in this order: William Kennedy, Cindy Hirschfield, Michelle Bonfils-Thibault, and Kyle Oberkater. And how we've set this up is we're going to start with Will, and when we start interviewing him, he'll turn his mic on and you'll be able to see him, and the other applicants will have their video off, and then when their turn is on, they'll turn their mic on and their video on, but they will be able to hear the responses to the other applicants. It's Zoom, so it's a little awkward, but when we thought about it, we normally have the P&Z applicants. They're either in the council room when the other applicants are being interviewed, or they're out in the lobby where we have the TV on. So we thought that was okay, even though the last folks obviously are going to be able to hear the questions and the answers of the other applicants. So I emailed you a series of questions. You're not bound by those questions. It was really to get you thinking and thinking about the type of questions that you would want to ask. So I'll start, and if you guys don't want to ask questions, I'll go ahead and go down the list and ask the questions that I prepared. And I'll start with the first one, which is, you know, just having the person tell them about themselves. So if we could start with Will Kennedy. Will, do you want to activate your video and your mic?
Hello, thank you for having me.
So this is Will Kennedy, and we're just going to start out with having Will tell us about himself and how long he's lived in Basalt and where he currently lives.
So I've lived and worked in Basalt for 3 years now. I live on Original Road up on the hill.
And why are you interested in serving on the P&Z?
Well, because I spend a lot of time here. You know, like I said, I live, I work here, I fish, and I dine. and I want to be more involved in the community.
And this is the last question I'll ask before I'll throw it out to you guys, but what skills do you think that you have, that you would be bringing to the P&Z that would help the town council in making decisions?
Well, I do have a master's in business. I also taught for 3 years in a college. I love the community, and I'm a very good organizer, and I'm great at reading and digesting information, and I think there's a lot of that as I went through your master plan, and I even went through your whole agenda for today. So, those are the main areas I can contribute.
Great. So I'll throw it out to the council if you have any particular questions, or I can continue to go down my list of questions. Bill, you're on. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd offer a question. Well, what do you think is the #1 land issue in our community?
Well, there's I guess the plot, it's the MEYERS plot? Seems to be, is that behind it, is that by the high school? Is that, well, that seemed like, I was reading about that in the 2020 plan.
I see.
And although it said that they put it on hold, there seems to be a lot of potential there. For controversy, there's this storage place going up that seems to be a little bit on hold. Guess that's...
Okay. Any other questions from council for Will? Susan, do you have more?
Sure. What kind of growth, Will, do you think the town should encourage?
Well, there's nothing like tax money from businesses. And I think Basalt collects 52% of their taxes from businesses. Is that what I saw in there? But we need housing too. The valley is growing, and it's a perfect place to live in between Aspen and Glenwood Springs.
Did you participate in any of the master plan meetings that we had last year?
I did not.
You read the master plan. Do you have any comments on the master plan or the Basalt zoning code?
Well, I guess something that I would bring up right away is the shuttle service that people are considering. And, how much would something like that get used? Because it's a shuttle between downtown and Willits, right? I thought that was kind of interesting. It's something that I would discuss. Where are the... Well, and then, another interesting is the density over sprawl. So definitely around here, you can tell that they like to keep houses together, which of course you sort of bundling services, and it's easier to run pipes and electricity and utilities and all of that. And then the constant... Willits is certainly drawing attention from old downtown Basalt and things that we could do for that.
Do you have any thoughts about growth outside the Basalt town limits or the urban growth boundary?
Well, I would be more, I guess, on the side of pro for more development in those areas for sure.
Elise?
I'm just curious what your thoughts are on annexation of some of the surrounding areas.
Well, you know, you hate to take people's property, right? That's essentially what's happening. Are you, no, oh, sorry, then what is that?
Sorry, I'm all on like 6 different mutes here. No, annexation would be to, you know, include neighborhoods that are currently outside of the city limits into the city limits. But obviously it's more complex than that, but we're not taking anybody's property. It would basically just be extending city limits to include additional neighborhoods.
Like El Jabal?
Like, yeah, like the, what is it, Cypress Village behind City Market as an example. The new tree farm area that's outside city limits, that could be an example. But I'm just asking, like, in a general lens, how do you see it?
Well, I guess ultimately it's sort of a tax issue versus what services we provide, right? I mean, I'm always for collecting more money. I am a person of business, so.
Will, what do you think the valley has an affordable housing problem, and what do you think the town should do about it?
How much of an affordable housing? So, you know, I work with plenty of people who have to come out from Rifle, and even some that come out from Grand Junction. And you have people who travel, you know, all the way from Rifle or Newcastle to Aspen to work. It's a pretty long commute. I'm sure that they would love to be able to live and work closer. So it's definitely something important to incorporate into your plan. And you know, every new development that you can put up, you can have a few units, you know, designated for that. But there's certainly a need, and I know people who have that need.
Okay, I got one last question. What do you think about climate change, and what do you think the town should do about it?
Well, you know, being a person of business, efficiency and IT, efficiency is very exciting, and I love efficiency. And the more that you can depend on, you know, the sun gives us everything. There's nothing the sun doesn't give us. So why can't we use the sun more? I love that stuff. And, you know, I'd love to see a lot more progress there. But I'm a big sustainable energy person.
Great. Well, that's all the questions I have. Are there any, I was going to ask you to see if there was anything else you wanted to add, or if the council has any other questions they'd like to ask you. Council, do you have anything else you'd like to ask Will? So,
It's a good panel of questions.
yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, I'm sorry, David, I thought you had a question.
No, I was just saying, no, I don't. And
Oh,
I
okay.
appreciate it.
Okay, great. Well, I think that kind of concludes our interview, unless there's something else that you'd like to add.
No, I'm all set. Thank you for having me.
Great, thank you, Will. Thanks.
You're welcome.
So our next applicant is Cindy Hirschfeld. Cindy, you want to unmute and video? So Cindy, we'll start the same. Hi. Maybe you could just tell everyone a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in serving on the P&Z.
Sure. You can all hear me, right? Okay. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I know some of you and the others who I don't know. Nice to meet you virtually. I've lived in the Roaring Fork Valley since 1998, and I've been a Basalt resident since 2003. I moved down here from Aspen because I could afford to buy a townhouse in the South Side neighborhood, and then when I got married, we upgraded to a house in the same neighborhood because we love it so much. And I'm interested in P&Z. I guess a larger picture is that I've always done volunteer service in the Valley. I volunteered for a lot of nonprofits. I've served on different boards, and I've become, I'd say I've become more civically involved in the last couple of years. In 2018, I got involved in the state elections, and I went to the state assembly as a Democratic delegate. And that experience really showed me how, you know, really things get done on a local level. And guess opened my eyes to seeing that local level, you know, that it is where if you care about your community and you want to have an input, you know, that's where you'll have the most effect. And around that same time, I took Citizens Academy up in Aspen, which is a 9-week course where they walk you through all the different sectors of the town government and explain to you how everything works. And I found that a really interesting experience. And I've done Roaring Fork leadership. And as far as now, I'm just in a position where I'm not on any other boards. You know, I'd like to be more involved in the town of Basalt, both to learn more about how things function in the government and to be able to give back. And so I thought planning and zoning seemed like a great opportunity to do that.
And if you could just add, you know, what, or emphasize what skills you think you bring that would help the town council in making decisions. My profession is as a writer and editor. For the last 5 years, I've been the editor-in-chief of Aspen Sojourner magazine. Had a little hiatus the last couple months, but it's back now. And so I'm an excellent communicator with the written word. You know, I feel like I'm a good communicator in general, and I also, you know, like hearing other people's ideas, sharing ideas, trying to reach a consensus. So those kind of things are skills that would seem to fit well into planning and zoning. And I'll also, just as a little aside, say that when I tuned in to the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting in August, I believe, when I applied, I was really surprised to see that there was only one woman on the committee. So I would like to see it increase its female representation. So this is the opportunity for Bill's question. Bill's question, what is the #1 land use issue that you see in our community?
I'd say in more of a big picture sense, I would say smart growth and just managing all the, you know, growth demands on this community right now while retaining that small town character that's been identified in the master plan is something that we all value and want to retain. And on a specific level, say probably still the river park as it moves forward, especially now that the art base, you know, doesn't seem like it will be going in there, you know, maybe ever. So that leaves a chunk of it that is up for decision making again.
Did you come to any of the master plan meetings last year?
I did. I went to, there were a couple ones I went to. There was one I remember at RMI, and there was another, I forget what the other one was, but yeah, I participated in that and the surveys and the presentations and things where we put sticky tags on the different neighborhoods in town to say what our preferences were.
Do you have any comments about our master plan or zoning code?
I don't off the top of my head. I have, and I don't, I'd have to go back and read through everything again if I were on the committee. I have a copy of the addendum that was made to the master plan in 2015 after the Our Town planning work. And I've read through that again, but at this point, I don't have a specific comment on it or anything that I strongly agree or disagree with.
So what kind of growth do you think the town should encourage?
I think navigating the growth ahead is going to be a challenge and requires some balance, and that's what interests me about being on the Planning and Zoning Commission too, is I don't consider myself either anti or pro development. I think each proposal, I'd be ready to help evaluate that on its individual merits. But certainly, we have issues to address like affordable housing, plots of land in town like the River Park, the Basalt Center Circle property, Lions Park, decisions to make on those, how to increase or maintain a certain level of vitality, what to do with those pieces of property that would appeal to a large number of people, and then, the issues that come with growth. More infrastructure needed, traffic issues, crowding, et cetera. I think that the pandemic now, with so many people coming from outside the valley to either live, more permanently in their second homes or buying property here, is going to change the complexion of our valley in some ways, which we're, just starting to see.
Do you have any thoughts about growth outside our urban growth boundary or municipal limits?
Yeah, that would be, to take a larger look at things, and how that growth integrates with both the town and the rest of the valley. And I know that there is, I believe there's one regional group that looks at that, but I've also heard people say that there could be more of a regional approach to that. So yeah, I think it's something, again, for me, that falls into the category of smart growth, where, we want to accommodate without maxing out or overtaxing, what our infrastructure currently is or what it could even become.
So I'll ask you Elisa's question, which had to do with, do you think the town should annex areas outside of town limits, like the Roaring Fork Mobile Home Park or El Jebel? What do you think about annexation?
I think that really depends on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, to me, one of the big pluses of annexation would be to give people more of a say in the town and to be able to vote for things like council. I realized during this past council election, talking to friends, how many people who are, right on the edge. I didn't know if they were in the town boundaries or not, but, I consider them neighbors, but they're not able to vote. And, obviously with annexation then comes more taxes and more regulations. So I don't have a general answer, like a yes or no, whether annexation would be good or bad. I think it really depends on, where it is and what the residents of that particular property, what they're looking for, what they would want.
So do you think that the valley has an affordable housing problem, and what do you think the town should do about it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's been an issue since I've been here, since I moved here 22 years ago. And I don't think we can build our way out of it. That said, I also don't think we, just give up and leave it to the free market to take care of it. I see a combination of approving affordable housing projects in places that are appropriate for it and can handle that amount of people and infrastructure. And then also, just trying to find and approve individual projects as they come up in these kind of nooks and crannies. When I tuned into the Planning and Zoning Commission that I saw a month or so ago, they were discussing a property that was over in the Willits Design Center. And it was just a small, maybe 4 apartments, but that kind of thing, those small projects, I think too, can help. It's not going to make a huge dent, but every little bit helps. So yes, we have a problem. No, I don't have the ultimate answer, but I agree it's something I say it's something we, certainly need to look at and consider.
Okay, my last question, what do you think about climate change, and what do you think the town should do about it?
Again, definitely a huge pressing issue. I think that town can probably most effectively address it in building codes and requirements. And I don't know what exactly the Basalt building code is in terms of that, but we have a incredible resource in our backyard with our Rocky Mountain Institute and the work that they're doing in resource efficiency and green building. We also have as a great example the Basalt Vista project, which is right behind where I live, which is cutting edge for its net zero resource setup. So I think, to me, those kind of construction things are probably where the town can have the biggest influence, and something that's really meaningful. I wasn't so into the idea of the veggie town council dinners or something. That to me seemed more like a virtue signaling.
Well, that was actually, I think, my last question. Is there anything else the council would like to follow up on? Hearing none, is there anything else, Cindy, you'd like to add?
I guess, you probably saw, it sounds like you saw my resume and my application, but I guess I would just add, when I was thinking on, if I were in planning and zoning, on how, I would go about evaluating projects in addition to how it fit into the guidelines of the master plan and, other, a little more nebulous concepts like the character of Basalt. I would, a couple of things that I would look at is whether a project would improve the quality of life for somebody, whether that's somebody who's getting affordable housing out of it, or, are there other amenities the project includes that would benefit Basalt? And then, for a larger project, what kind of infrastructure would it be able to exist within the infrastructure that exists? Or would something like an additional road or, another traffic light or something, be needed to accommodate that, and who would pay for that sort of improvement?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Cindy. I think that that is a good wrap up. All
right. Thank you so much.
Bill, we can't hear you. So Cindy, you can go ahead and probably go off video, and we'll put on Michelle Bonfils Thibault. Michelle?
Go.
Good evening. You guys have a long meeting ahead of you.
I'm Michelle Bonfils-Thibault. I've been in Basalt for 15 years, but I've been in the Valley since the 80s. I remember when Highway 82 ran right through downtown Basalt, right past the 7-Eleven. And I've seen the Valley change, obviously, a lot since those days to today. I'm just going to run with it because I'm lucky enough to be third in line, so I know some of your questions already, Susan.
Great.
Why do I want to serve on P&Z? I've been here for 15 years. I have a ton of planning experience. Some things that worked out really well and some things that failed. And it'd be great to help Basalt with some of the things that I've been through already and just to give back to the community. I'm a land use planner. I've done a lot of affordable housing development for the city of Aspen. I've also worked in crazy places like Los Angeles doing real estate development there, and that's exciting as well in a weird, different way. That was a long time ago. And I think that now's our time to move forward with some affordable housing and environmental policies to keep Basalt ahead of going down the tubes as the pressures of growth are pressing in on us.
So I'll let you then continue on with Mayor Kane's question about what you think is the number one land use issue in our community.
Yeah, I think the number one land use issue in our community is affordable housing. Affordable housing impacts the environment, it impacts traffic, it impacts the businesses, all of these things. It impacts the land use code, you know, how we maintain our single family neighborhoods, how we justify density, where we place density, all of these things. If people live here, people support the businesses and back and forth.
Did you participate in the master plan meetings that we had last year?
I did, but mostly in a virtual way, in all honesty. You know, I think that there are a lot of exciting things coming forward with that, preserving the open space around town and figuring out how to concentrate density in existing developed areas. You know, it's a fine balance for sure. So I would add those.
Well, you've already talked about affordable housing. What do you think the town should do about affordable housing?
Mm-hmm. I think there are a lot of ways to be creative that are difficult and time consuming, but it's really the only path forward. I would agree that we can't build our way out of it, and we need to figure out ways to collaborate with different businesses to partner, but we also need to look at the land use code. And it may be time to do something that's really revolutionary, like no more single family houses anymore. I'm not necessarily suggesting that, but it might be something to go that extreme, and everything has an accessory dwelling unit now. We need something that makes density palatable and creates the housing without burdening or overburdening our infrastructure and our services.
And what do you think about growth outside the town limits and outside the urban growth boundary?
Mm-hmm. I think that growth is appropriate where growth currently exists. I think the pressures of our town becoming so popular are going to force us to make a lot of hard choices. There are going to be a lot of hard decisions that come up as people want to develop, you know, in Emma, in places that are a rural character. And so this kind of goes hand in hand with the question about annexation and bringing those other communities into Basalt. I think it's necessary, but we do need to have a financial analysis done on what does that mean for our services. I mean, I just thinking of thinking of the planning department for the town of Basalt. If we had, or the building department even, including all of Soper's Village and all of Blue Lake and all of that, we do not have enough staff right now to service all of those residences. So, and that's a problem that can be solved. Then there are a lot of ways to, balance out the pros and cons of it.
What do you think about climate change, and what do you think the town should do about it?
Yeah, I would agree with the previous interviewee that we have these amazing resources we all know in Basalt right now with Rocky Mountain Institute and Roaring Fork Conservancy, but we need to be bold and tighten down on our land use regulations and our building code and really make it so that it's a disincentive to not build efficiently and to not go the next step. And really all of our new buildings should be headed toward net zero.
Do you have any other comments about our master plan or zoning code?
I honestly, I just read today that one of the goals is to make sure that the building code got up to speed for the fire protection, considering the recent fire a few years ago, and that was, just kind of an eye-opener. It's way more interesting, frankly, for me to talk about affordable housing, but the reality of what's happening on Basalt Mountain and needing to take care of things that we hope never happen again. I don't know exactly what the status of that is, but it seems critical.
And those were all my questions. So just to wrap up, is there any counselors that have anything particular they would like to ask Michelle? And seeing none, Michelle, is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I would love to help our community go forward, and thank you for all that you're doing during this weird time of Zoom video meetings. It's strange for everybody.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Michelle.
And so we're ready then for our last applicant. Kyle, do you want to now share your video and your face and start by telling us introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for taking the time tonight. Again, my name is Kyle Oberketter. I've been in the Valley just a little over 5.5, almost 6 years now. I've lived in Basalt for 4 years, bought my townhome on Lakeside Drive about 4 years ago after living 1 year in Aspen. Just a little about myself. I was an engineer for an oil company before moving to the Valley, and was working overseas, basically got burned out and wanted to be back in the mountains. Kind of long story short, ended up buying the laundromat in Aspen and then another business in Aspen before selling everything, and now do senior living development, so independent living, assisted living, and memory care communities around Colorado. Our closest development is actually in downtown Carbondale, right behind True Nature. So work on the development side, but in a very kind of niche business. So that's a little bit about myself. I'll go into some of the questions, you don't have to repeat them. The number one land use issue I think Basalt has to take care of and focus on is the basically very particular old Clark's Market area. It's a prime area for some type of density and to basically help revitalize the downtown core, whether we're bringing in more retail or commercial to help with sales tax, to help with revenue, hotels, other areas. I think that's a prime area that needs to get worked on and figured out because there are many options, and it was a big part of the master plan picture. And I think there was a lot of public comment, especially regarding that parcel. So I think anything that we try to do there will take quite a long time to find the right team together that'll kind of figure out what they want to do there and how that can be accomplished, and include some type of affordable housing, but also a big piece to bring in enough tax dollars to keep the town going. In regards to affordable housing, I think it's a catch-22 in strictly relation to planning and zoning and building. The more you bring your codes to a green standard, the more expensive it gets to build, and it really decreases the interest in how to find the way to build affordable housing and make it work. So I think we have to be very careful about just pushing the green initiative, which may not allow for affordable housing to happen in the right way. But it needs to happen in some regards, and I think it needs to be pinpointed on what the goal of the community is, whether it's for basically families or for more of the individuals and younger crowd that are looking to find a place, because that definitely changes the type of affordable housing you're doing. I think we've seen the success next to, in downtown, next to Subway and everything that, filled up immediately. So there's absolutely a strong desire to do it. And I think working with outside companies that have a lot of experience getting grant money and finding outside financial help will really potentially help us build more if we can find the right place for it. In regards to annexation, I think the only way to have the full community have a voice is to continue that growth. But also, as other applicants have said, we need to be careful that city government can handle bringing more stress onto our government. So as long as it's done in a professional fashion, I think it's a thing we need to do, especially with all of the big projects that are approved, including the tree farm and some other areas. That if we don't look at that, we may lose the chance to have our input. In regards to climate change, kind of spoke about that already, but it is a major thing we need to look at. I think there needs to be a big push or concentration on the amount of traffic moving up and down the valley and how that can really be scaled back if possible. There are so many cars just going up and down, especially now that we've seen kind of the influx of people. The amount of traffic just in our kind of 5-mile corridor has gotten crazy, and that is just something that can be looked at and discussed, and I think could be a major piece that we could work on. I think that covered everything, unless I missed a few, but any other questions?
Well, did you participate in the master plan meetings last year?
Yes, I went to the one at the high school. I think we were putting all the sticky notes around.
Do you have any comments about our master plan or zoning code?
I think it's amazing to see what we've been able to create with the master plan. I think finding and putting into action a number of these initiatives is going to be very key and take a lot of work. But I also think it is somewhat of a catch-all and that needs to be focused on a few areas where there's potential nothing will get done. So I think it's been great to see how all-encompassing it is, but there are, I think, are a few major areas. And for me personally, it's the Clark's Market area that really needs to have a lot of work done to it. Just in regard to the code, no real comments at this point.
Okay, and what about growth outside the town's urban growth boundary or town limits?
I think the major parcels have been determined of where growth should happen in a responsible manner. As mentioned by some of the other people, the Emma area has definitely got a more rural feel, and we need to make sure that we keep a small town character where we can and ensure that some of the larger ranches survive and we don't just have an urban sprawl. But I think through the master plan, there's been a great picture of where there should be appropriate growth.
So I think you actually covered all of the questions. Counselors, do you have any questions for Kyle? Kyle, do you have any other wrap-up comments? You didn't really speak to the skills that you thought that you would bring to the board.
So in regards to skills, I've been a small business owner in the Valley, along with working on the development side. So I know what it takes to put together a good team, but also having the team that requires, I think, for me, is kind of a listen first mentality before reacting or commenting on anything. So just for me, it's very important to understand what other people are thinking and then take those comments and really do taking a critical approach to how to move forward.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think that is a good wrap up. And so we've interviewed now all 4 members of the for the P&Z, Mayor Kane, and we're going to talk about the appointments later in the meeting in executive session. So is there anything else that anybody, Mayor, you would like to add or anything before we close off?
No, just thank all the applicants, excellent people, and we're gonna have some tough choosing here. We've got some really qualified folks, and quite encouraging to see the interest and enthusiasm and support for the community. So we thank everybody.
Well, thank you all. Thanks. So we can go ahead and end the work session, and we have like 9 minutes now before the actual meeting starts, so we can take a little bit of a recess and then begin again at 6 o'clock then.
Great. All right, thanks. See everybody in 9 minutes. Good evening, everyone. I'm Bill Kane, Basalt Town Mayor, and you're welcome to the October 27th edition of the Basalt Town Council meeting. So welcome. We will start our order of business tonight with a roll call. Pam,
Certainly.
please call the roll.
Thank you. Glenn Drummond?
Here.
Thank you, Glenn. David Knight?
Here.
Thank you, David. Elise Hoddle?
Present?
Thank you, Elise. Gary Tenenbaum?
Here.
Thank you, Gary. Bill Infante?
Here.
Thank you, Bill. Ryan Slack?
Here.
Thank you. And Mayor Kane?
Here.
Thank you.
So we've called the roll. Our first order of business tonight is to approve our consent agenda. There are 2 public hearing continuations on the consent agenda as well as minutes. I believe, Ryan, do you want to comment on the school choice week? I think we're not ready for that. I think that may be coming.
Yeah, we wanted to go ahead and pull that one off. Staff wants to speak with the school district about that and, just get some input before we understand sort of all of the implications of it. At face value, it seems fine, and I've got to call into them at this point. But it just got on there prematurely, so if we could pull that off, we could bring it back at a subsequent meeting.
Great. So with that, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move the town council approve the consent agenda as modified,
For a second?
as adjusted.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. I think we can do this with a voice vote. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, sorry to interrupt, but we should do this by a roll call vote because it doesn't. Continuing an ordinance.
I'm wrong. I'm only wrong roughly 100% of the time on these. So,
I'm right there with you, Bill.
Yeah. Okay, Pam.
Okay, all right. Let's begin with Bill Infante.
Yes, approved.
Thank you. Ryan Slack?
Yes.
Thank you. Elise Huddle?
Yes.
Thank you. Gary Tenenbaum?
Yes.
Thank you. Glenn Drummond?
Yes.
Thank you. David Knight?
Yes.
And Bill Kane?
Yes.
Thank you all. Motion carries.
Okay, that concludes our consent agenda. Our next. Our next order of business is to open it up for public comment. This is the portion of our meeting where we will receive comments from the public. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and address your comments directly to the mayor. Identify yourself by name and address when making comments. Comments should be courteous, civil, and constructive. Town council will make no decision or take action other than to direct the town manager. So with this, we will open the mic for public comment. Susan, why don't you keep an eye to see if we have interested public.
Sure, and remember, you are to email planning@basalt.net or text 970-987-7010 with your name and your phone number. And I've started the clock for 1.5 minutes, and we did get a couple requests to talk, but they're during one of the public hearing items on the agenda. So during Stotz Mill, we'll call them. But so far, we haven't had an indication for anyone to make a comment during this portion of the agenda. So we're good. I didn't receive any emails, and we didn't receive any text messages that anyone wanted to speak during this time on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our open for public comment period. The next portion of our agenda is devoted to comments from mayor and council reports or comments. So floor is open. Gary Tenenbaum.
Hello all. Hey, I got a question about the council copy things. You know, one of the things I thought we were supposed to do with the council copies was really have a chance to talk among council people. And there's a reason why you haven't seen me at any of them is I don't think they're doing what they intended to do. And having people show up to talk to us was not the intent of this. I'm totally happy for the public to come and listen, but I thought it was a chance for us to get together and kind of, talk amongst ourselves, even if the public's there listening, they're public meetings. So I just want to let you know that's why I will not show up. I heard about the last one, and it's just disappointing that it's not doing what it was supposed to do, and they get co-opted by, certain members of the public. There's council meetings to bring up things to council, and that's the perfect way to do it for us. So I'm hoping that, if we want to continue this, that's the future of these. Otherwise, I really just don't see the need to do that, because we have public comment at meetings. And honestly, for me personally, is, I really hope, we're going into a COVID winter, and COVID's on the rise again, and I just don't know what the winter's going to hold. Is it going to be the same as, what the summer brought, where everyone's trying to get away from their own COVID issue and they come here to visit? Winter could be different. And I really think we need to come together as a town and a council to really address the needs of our businesses and our citizens, and really work together and not do things that divide this town. And I really hope that, moving forward, that we work together and really try to find positive ways to move forward, because, some of this negativity, especially in this, the negativity over a public works facility piece, it's not productive. It's not productive for staff to be chasing down all this stuff. And it's actually, almost an attack on staff, because I feel that we need to really, as a council, we work as a majority, and it's 4 votes, 4 people plus, and that's the direction to the town manager, because we cannot have, the town running around doing things that are not directed by the majority of this council, and that's just the way council works. So I'm hopeful that, we can work together, and if we really want to work together as a council, I'd love to potentially do these coffees or afternoon drinks or something, but I'd really like it to set it up where we can talk as a council and the public can listen in and sit around. But I just feel that we need to be, careful about what we do on these things, and I'm hoping that we can move forward on that.
Glenn, and then Bill, did you have your hand up also? Glenn, and then Bill, and then Elise.
I would kind of like to second Gary's comments on that. It almost delved into a policy discussion on this past meeting. And those aren't things that we should do without minutes. We're not being true to the public, being open. We got to make sure that everything that we discuss as a council is fully vetted within the public realm. And I think that unfortunately, when these kind of things get into this situation, we end up with this, it could end up being he said, she said kind of deal. And that's really not what we were trying to do. It was more about like, hey, we haven't had a chance to meet the public because we're a new council. We haven't had a chance to have face-to-face. But as far as how this is going, the last couple, I mean, it seems like everything that I've been to all 3 of them, and it seems like there's been a distinct agenda to each one, and I don't know that that's originally what we discussed in our retreat when we were up there at Cap K. And I think we got to kind of pump the brakes and make sure that we're vetting everything we're doing here within the public realm. That's my opinion.
I think Bill Infante was next. Oh.
It's okay with folks. I'd actually like to defer to Elise, because I've got a few things that I want to cover. And so, Elise, if it's okay with you, I'd defer to you to go first, and then I'll go after that.
Okay, thank you, Bill. First of all, I just want to say, Gary, that I hear you and I understand that maybe we had different ideas of what coffee with council would be. I think you're right. I think the original discussion was that we started with an opportunity for counselors to talk amongst themselves in a formal posted way that wasn't going against any rules or regulations. But then I also respectfully disagree that I don't think that I've said this all along. This is nothing different from what I said in my campaign. I don't think that 3 minutes of public comment that's unidirectional is sufficient. And I think the proof is in the pudding that people are coming to these coffees and they do have things that they want to talk about. Unfortunately, this last meeting devolved horribly, and I would like to issue an apology to all of my fellow council members and to the public that it went that direction and that we didn't arrest it. I agree with Glenn. I don't think we should be getting deep into discussions of things that are salient to our council agenda. But I don't think that we should end them or that we should turn the public away. Clearly they want to talk to us, and I think that that's really important. So, maybe what we need to do is sort of rethink the process and look at other opportunities, or us to meet as counselors, in a casual environment to just chit chat. Obviously there's a lot of stuff to discuss. I think the more we talk, the more we realize what about doing a facilities master plan, or what about, this and what about that? And I think those are all great ideas, and I want to talk to you guys about those things. We just don't have that opportunity in a council session. But I also want to hear from the public. One of the things that I heard when I posted the Coffee with Council to the Basalt community page, and this is for Chief Knott, is that the folks that work on Midland Avenue are parking in front of their businesses and not leaving room for customers. And we've heard that before, but those are the sort of things that I kind of expected to hear at these meetings. And those are the sorts of things that we want to hear, because those are the things that we can pass along and we can take action on. So my 2 cents is we don't give up on Coffee with Council, but maybe we rethink how we do it and whether or not we need a separate venue for just, a listening session for the public and a conversation session for council.
Thanks, Elise. Bill, you want to say a few words?
Yeah, I've got a few updates that I think are of general interest from kind of around town. And before getting to that, I would only echo what Elise said and add that outreach to community is extraordinarily important, and that's how I saw Coffee with Council, was as an opportunity for the community to speak to council, because 3 minutes every other week just doesn't do it. But I have actually a bunch of questions, Bill, too, interspersed within updates. One, I wanted to ask whatever happened to kind of the COVID sector working groups, because Gary was commenting on the need to respond to. Somebody's got a lot of noise in the background.
Kristen, can you please mute your phone?
Gary,
can you please mute Kristen's phone?
Kristen,
yeah.
please.
Somebody intervene. Okay, seems to have quieted a little bit, but let me agree with Gary that I too am very concerned about the next 3 months and the thereafter with regard to our economy and our businesses. So I'm curious whatever happened to the COVID sector working groups. And Bill, I guess in several different fora, not least CAPK, you had suggested that council would meet with the Chamber Board of Directors. So I'm curious when that might happen, because I think it would be very valuable, particularly now as we try to plan strategy going forward. I'll use that as the segue. Some of you may have participated in the Aspen Chamber Zoom call today. I won't go through all that they discussed. I believe it was recorded. Super, super interesting because of what the Chamber is doing to provide economic support, promote local shopping. They've come out with a whole bunch of visitor resource guides, huge mobilization and effort. The upshot, however, for them is that they are suffering in ways that we are not. They're pretty much down on tax revenues, both from sales and lodging, and so we're going to have to cut. But there were several interventions by the real estate industry, and they commented on the boom in real estate sales, which is quite striking. They're up twofold from their best year ever to, if I heard correctly, to a little bit north of about $1 billion in sales thus far, whereas the prior best year was about 500 million. Had another question too, since a couple folks mentioned Cap K. Did we ever get the minutes and the conclusions from that retreat? Because kind of be interested in what the prognosis was from whatever her name was who came out to facilitate. Bill, you want to talk about Sheldon, or you want me to just say anything?
Sure. Why don't you hit it, and then I'll fill in if there's any,
Okay. At one of the Coffee with Councils, Bill and I were joined, or we joined, some community members, and one of them, Michaela from one of the Aspen Youth Centers, facilitated a meeting for Bill and me with Sheldon Wolitsky. Sheldon Wolitsky is the IT entrepreneur who settled in Missouri Heights and is interested to invest in a Mid-Valley Rec Center. Incredibly productive meeting from my perspective. We talked about the general framework, and we can go into greater detail at a later time, but I think Bill and I were together in offering our support in communicating the advantages and the support of the town to county and other municipal officials up and down the valley so that we produce something that is truly significant for the whole of the Rolling Fork Valley. Shelton property, update on that. We had discussed the Hoagland property quite a bit. Elise and I went out and walked it, and in as much as there are a lot of very compelling assets, the greatest disadvantage the site has is this non-zoning, or whatever the technical term of art is. And according to Mike, from what we were informed, it would take between 3 and 4 years to get this rezoned for the purposes that we want, and that, frankly, is a deal killer for the short-term interest that we have in identifying a maintenance site. But it's still very interesting, and as I commented to Bill today, it has extensive water rights, which, if the town of Basalt is looking to preserve water quantity for the future, this may be something that we want to discuss from the perspective of water quantity protection. And David, from your seat on Rolling Fork Conservancy, perhaps this is something that offers an opportunity to partner with one of our great institutions. Pam circulated, or Ryan circulated, the 1015 memo that I had sent to Bill and Ryan Mahoney with a bunch of questions. And I guess I'm still kind of interested in the answers to those, but it begins with the big issue of, having a look at the title policy commitment, just so we all understand what we're all getting into. But I'd also kind of be interested, since we've recruited this real estate dude to help with the assessment, identification of other properties, that we have the opportunity to hear from Teddy, and if he's prepared to brief us before the 10th, that would be great. But otherwise, I would suggest that we may want to continue until later in the month of November, when Teddy's had an opportunity to do what it is we've kind of asked him to do. The last thing is Northwest COG. This is mostly for Gary and Ryan Slack. There was a little bit of discussion about childcare in the valley, childcare in our county, and so I just want to call your attention to that. I know the notes were circulated. Watkins and I both attended, and he did the heavy lifting on composing the notes. I just added a few things, but did want to let you guys know that there was discussion about childcare. And that's it from me.
Thank you. Gary, I think you had a hand up, and then David.
Well, I just wanted to, we, as on my day job for Picken County Offices, we looked at the Hoagland Ranch parcel, and the water rights are not that extensive. They're paper water rights, and the reality is when you really look at them, on a 10-acre parcel, you can only put a portion of those water rights onto that property. So they look great on paper, but in reality, they're not anything that, they're good, they're okay. They could irrigate that, probably about 4 or 5 acres over there, but it's not extensive to the point where it would be worth even the look at of, buying it. We decided not even to look at it for open space because the water rights weren't really that exciting.
Great. David?
I want to take us back one more time to coffee with council, if I could. I just listened to, I was debating on whether I was going to comment on this or not, and I listening to everybody speak, I heard a lot of points that I agree with on coffee with council. I think last Tuesday was not what anybody envisioned, but I don't think that's representative of what we can do with that venue. I think it is beneficial to hear outside of this space what the public has to say. I think it is inclusive. It's a good thing. It's going to be a positive thing. Several of us were at the first meeting, and I thought it was a productive meeting. I thought a lot of dialogue occurred there that is leading to some further conversations and some things that we don't necessarily speak about here in council chambers. So I think that was good. I think that should be more representative. So I think it's a good opportunity to kind of seek to understand, and we need to approach, if we continue to do it as a council, we have to decide that. We should approach it from that vantage point, in my opinion, seeking to understand. Glenn, spot on. I don't think we should be debating. We certainly can't make decisions. And I think we need to make sure that we're hearing any media requirements, right? We want to make sure we're doing that for the sake of transparency. Divisiveness, though, I don't think has any place, and I think we, need to kind of rise to the occasion, not to be divisive, any of us, and I think we can do that. The last thing I'll say is that we do need to have opportunities to speak as a council. So I think that was intent that was expressed early on, and I think we should look at that and figure out a way that we can do that as well. I know we've spoken about, should we moderate this, the coffees, should we not, what's the intent? I think we need to do it with intent and make sure that we're meeting the requirements that, that we all kind of agreed upon in our retreat. But I think we can rise to this, and I think it could be a really good thing. We should continue discussing it and look into it in the future.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else on council on comments? Elise?
I wanted to comment on the latest chamber report. Stated that there were 30 applicants for the little mini grant program that we set up. And, doing the math, assuming that everybody asked for the maximum amount, which is, maybe a false assumption, but, that's like $25,000 over, I think, what we had allocated. And the reason I'm bringing this to everyone's attention is just because that's to say that clearly there's still a need and still a demand for help in this valley. And, I don't know what the answer is. I wish that we could just award everybody, the full amount and just find the extra money or whatever it takes. But I just am sort of using that as sort of an entry to say, I think that it's going to get worse before it gets better. And you know, we should all have that sort of in the back of our minds to be thinking about what kinds of programs and offerings, you know, we can make available to our community.
That's a nice comment, thank you.
Let's turn back to this.
Anyone else on council want to offer anything? I would just like to make one or two comments about the council meeting, the council coffee process and format. I would be the first to take responsibility for a meeting of which it could be said that there was possibly more heat than light that came out of that encounter last week. And, you know, upon reflection, it feels inappropriate to me to be discussing having essentially open heart surgery on an agenda topic that is pending before the town council. That is not what folks really want to come out to hear. I don't think too many people were there with burning fascination about whether there was a legally recorded easement for a hypothetical road. That's not a good use of anybody's time. We should be talking to one another about what the big issues in the community are, how we're going to get through the winter, you know, what are the restaurants going to do, what's the employment outlook look like, how are we doing with sales tax, do you guys have money set aside? They're the kind of things that I think, you know, are, you know, obviously they're warmer, fuzzier topics, but they're really philosophically what I think we ought to be using those times for. And I think we ought to just set some ground rules to say that unless there's an extraordinary circumstance, we really can't have a discussion, particularly on an item that is pending between a first and second reading of an ordinance. That's, you know, all of a sudden that's supplanting the public hearing process. There are tons of people in the public that might be interested in hearing all about that, and it's just not the right time or right place to have those things. And I will be quick to apologize for the acrimony that may have surfaced there. You know, I am honestly very defensive of our town staff. I think they are working hard on this. I think they have unearthed a number of due diligence items that are pretty stern and are going to be met before this council's going to want to support this going forward with this project. And so I just got obviously a little bit defensive. I think if we can manage this agenda and use it for really kind of visioning conversations about our community and how we can support one another and how we go forward, that's a hell of a good use of time. But I'm going to be very discouraging about using those coffees for getting in the entrails of our you know, council agenda on a week-to-week basis. That's just not a great use of the time. So that's all I would say to that. The other short comment I would make is the chief is on with us, and we had a small, but I felt kind of significant little award last week for two of our officers who really went beyond the call and showed not only courage, but unbelievable smarts and efficiency and saved a couple lives. Travis and Bo did an outstanding job, and I'm, you know, on behalf of all the council, I know we're really proud of our department with those guys out there. So, Chief, congratulations and thanks to your guys. Make sure they know it. So, it was really good. Anybody else? Susan, you gonna shut us down here?
Yeah, sorry for the distraction if that was distracting, but we got some notice from our public that we're not connected to Grassroots. So what we have decided to do is we're first going to take and have Amy at Grassroots do a hard boot on the Grassroots system. So we need to take like a 5-minute break and everybody can stay on Zoom. And then if we can't get connected, then we'll try a different technique, but we're going to try that first. But that's actually really pretty important for us to do for our public hearings tonight. So if we could take a 5-minute break starting at
Let's take 5, and it is will be resume at 4:15.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
How long were we down, if I could ask?
What? 15. She thinks 15 minutes.
About 15 minutes, and It's been recording on Zoom, so it'll be rebroadcast, and it'll also be on YouTube, all of the comments and all. We just weren't going live out to television land.
It'll be a great relief to the public to know that my comments weren't audible, so that's a break.
Technology, gotta love it.
Great, thank you all. So we are back in action here. We concluded our council comments, and we are now ready to turn to our town manager's report. So Ryan Mahoney, you're up, sir.
Okay, a couple of quick updates. First, just wanted to mention, I put it in my Friday report, but we got together last Tuesday, a week ago, today, to do a reseeding project out on some of the flood mitigation control structures that we put into place after the Lake Christine fire. And these ones were the last structures that we built at the last possible days of our grant cycle last year, bumping up against Christmas. And so we went out to finish. The final piece was just reseeding the piles and reseeding the basins themselves. So we actually had a good group of folks, Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers, helped, led the charge that day, and we got some seed to do that, donated from the co-op down in Carbondale, so much thanks to them, as well as burritos to feed the hungry after a hard day's work from El Corrida. So that was a lot of fun and good turnout, and we now have that completed. I think this snow, a little blanket of snow and moisture, was a good thing for it. Tomorrow, we will be filming a community update, so the mayor, as well as the public health directors from both Eagle and Picken counties, will be talking about the uptick in COVID cases. So we want to provide some messaging to the community about that. That should come out later this week. And then wanted to give a shout out to Boyd and his crew with Public Works. You know, they got their first run at dealing with the snow, and it was a pretty wet and heavy snow. So they wrestled with it, but I think my observations were they did a great job. So just wanted to make sure I recognize them. And a couple other just quick things with regard to any questions that council has forwarded us for the Shelton property. We are working on those answers and intend on providing those back to council. So at the next meeting, we will be discussing on providing that information to you. And as far as like some of the documents, like the title policy or the schematics, we're happy to provide those in advance so you can take a look at them. And then, Bill, you had asked about the CAP-K, the minutes and conclusions from that. So that didn't fall off the face of the earth, believe it or not. We have been working and actually have a draft now of a council guiding principles document that we basically took all those minutes and transferred that into something that we'll have council review. And so we'll be bringing that back to you in the near future here. And I think I'll leave it at that for now, Mayor.
Great, thank you, Ryan. So, any questions for our town manager before we move on? Thank you very much. Our first order of business then is the approval of an intergovernment. It's going to be resolution number 38 of 2020. It's approving the intergovernmental agreement for the Rudai Water and Power Authority, Jeff Conklin and April Long. Hopefully, there's April, she's on. live with us here. So thank you guys, and why don't you fill us in on where we are?
Okay, great. I can get started. Jeff, if you have anything to say, please interrupt me as I go. I am going to try to be relatively quick tonight, so if it's okay with you, Mayor, I'd like to share my screen so that I can show a PowerPoint.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Are you guys seeing a slideshow and no notes?
We're seeing the slideshow, and
Okay. Okay, great. I'm April Long. I am the Executive Director of the Rudai Water and Power Authority. I wanted to introduce myself. I think that several of you are familiar with the Rudai Water and Power Authority, but for those of you that aren't, and for the public that may be watching at home, we are an organization, it's a quasi, or it is a governmental organization that I'm going to explain a little bit more, but it's kind of funny because we have no water, no power, no authority, and we're not related to Rudai. So our name really confuses people, and it takes some explanation, but you'll often hear me refer to it as RWAPA, and some people who are more familiar with it might call it RWAPA, but all the same organization. Our mission is to mobilize resources and influence to benefit the waters and communities of the Roaring Fork Watershed. So it's the entire watershed that we're talking about. And while we have no water, no power, and no authority, and we're not strictly related to Rudai, we were born from those ideas. And so we were formed in the early 1980s to collaborate and corroborate around the development of hydropower at the base of Rudai Reservoir. That hydropower is now owned by the city of Aspen solely. But that is kind of where RWAPA began. And the thought was at the time that the jurisdictions within the watershed, so Aspen, Snowmass, Basalt, Carbondale, Eagle County, Picken County, and for some time Garfield County participated too, they recognize, like many of our resources, water does not pay attention to jurisdictional boundaries, and that we may be better served as a watershed to look at the bigger picture, to look at our water more holistically, and to share in responsibilities, share in protection, and to put together joint efforts for the protection of that water resource. So we're essentially the eyes and the ears and the voice for the Roaring Fork Watershed as it relates to water resources, water quality, water availability, water supply, and when we're thinking about how we manage that and share responsibility for that as a watershed. We have a board of elected officials from each of those jurisdictions that I mentioned, and one part-time contract employee, that's me. So like part-time, so a pretty small job for me. And then the town of Basalt's representative on our board is Ryan Slack, and he has been there for a couple of years, which is how long I've been there. My predecessor was Mark Fuller, and he was the executive director for Rudai Water and Power Authority for almost 40 years. We meet on a quarterly basis, and so we try to, in pre-COVID times, we would do those meetings across the watershed, but now they're, like everyone, via some virtual platform. So I think that I get a lot of questions about kind of how are we different from the Roaring Fork Conservancy, or how are we different from the Picken County Healthy Rivers and Streams Board, which are organizations that are also working in watershed. And what I would say is that we work closely with those organizations, and we are partners with them in lots of ways, but the ways that we're different is that we're comprised of elected officials. So we're more government rooted. We think about policy and planning. We're not strictly an education or project organization, though that is part of our work. So we're able to advocate on behalf of the communities. And so I participate regularly in communications, and I'll try to be specific about Basalt tonight, but if you're interested in what we do throughout the watershed, I can bring up other examples and would be happy to do so. But Basalt reaps a lot of the benefits of the Rudai Water and Power Authority because we work so heavily in Rudai Reservoir and on the releases that happen out of Rudai and in the frying pan and in the lower Roaring Fork. And so I like I was saying, I regularly participate in communications about how that flow is managed. I research, review, and represent us, the Roaring Fork Watershed, at a regional and state level on the things that we, as all of our jurisdictions, agree upon, and as directed by our board. And I bring information about what's happening on a regional and state level back to our board. So examples of this includes like commenting on how changes to the Clean Water Act may affect the Roaring Fork Watershed, or how are we represented in Colorado's water plan? Are we adequately represented when we're thinking about the demand and use of water in the future, and from the Roaring Fork Watershed perspective? I also assist our valley and our communities in fostering our own plans, and so we have several stream management plans, which is our plans designed around how do we better manage the limited resource that we have of water in our rivers, so that we benefit all of the uses and demands that we have on our water. So how do we better manage, supplying water for municipal and agricultural purposes, but also retaining water for recreational and environmental purposes in the river? And so those are stream management plans, but we also have the Roaring Fork Watershed Plan, which is a large plan that many stakeholders in the valley work together on, and identified over 250 action items of ways that we want to improve and protect the Roaring Fork water. And so that plan needed someone to host it and to facilitate it and to move it forward and to make sure that we as communities are making progress on it, and that falls on RWAPA's shoulders. We may be most well known because of our Rudai A&S inspections. So the A&S program up at Rudai Reservoir is the Aquatic Nuisance Species Program. It's essentially the boat inspection program that's operated there to ensure that we're not introducing mussels into Rudai Reservoir. Colorado is mussel-free because of the rigorous inspection program that CPW has for most of the reservoirs in the state. RWAPA and Rudai Reservoir are a little different because it's not a state-owned facility. And so there are lots of partners that make sure that the A&S program is successful at Rudai. The Bureau of Reclamation owns the water and the dam. The land is owned by the Forest Service. The program in the state is sponsored by CPW. The reservoir itself sits on Eagle and Picken County land. And so it takes a lot of partners to make sure that that happens, and RWAPA is the coordinator for all of that. And we also receive funding from each of our participating jurisdictions, as well as those partnering agencies that I mentioned, and the Colorado River District and Ute Water, which Colorado River District and Ute Water own or contract a significant share of the water in Rudai Reservoir. So they're very interested in ensuring that that water is protected and that the infrastructure downstream of it is protected. Let's talk about that program just for a minute and move forward. So that program, like I said, Colorado is mussel-free. We have a lot of boaters at Rudai Reservoir that also boat at Lake Powell, and Lake Powell is infested with mussels. And these mussels are just a terrible nuisance species in that they proliferate really quickly, they breed really quickly, they're filtering animals, so they just destroy all of the quality of the water. Basically, they're eating all the macroinvertebrates. And so they could easily destroy the recreational opportunities that we have at Rudai, the fishery that we have. They could infest in ways that would make it impossible to produce hydropower for the city of Aspen's hydropower, their power portfolio. And then we are also concerned that that could impact the fishery of the Frying Pan River as well. And so this is a rigorous inspection program, and the threat is increasing. In 2018 was the first year that we found boats that could be carrying mussels. We found 2 in 2018. In 2019, we found 6, and in 2020, we have found 17 boats. And we operated for a month, but we shortened our month of operation, or I shortened our season of operation by a month. That is also the most of any reservoir in the state of Colorado. And so the threat at Rudai is real, it is growing, and it's growing exponentially. And RWAPA is responsible for ensuring the success of that program. So, some more things that RWAPA does, particularly for like the town, that the town of Basalt may benefit from, is in that release program. And so how is water released out of Root Eye Reservoir, and how does it affect the Frying Pan River? And so I participate in phone calls regularly about how the reservoirs in the West are operated, and I'm advocating on behalf of our community. So I'm advocating for releases that ensure that we have wadeable flows, or that might ensure that through the winter, our macroinvertebrate population, which feeds our fish and our fishery, is going to be successful for the coming spring. And that we get that we are attempting to get flushing flows, so that again is increasing the health of that of the frying pan. And sometimes in the summer, specifically in 2 out of the last 3 summers, we've had temperature issues on the lower Roaring Fork, where we have had to ask for fishing to stop, for anglers to stop fishing to reduce the stress on our fishery because temperatures in the river were so high. And so I'm working with these partners that have contract water in Root Eye to ensure that they're releasing, to try to achieve some releases that decrease the temperature on the river, so that we can continue to recreate on it, and that we can continue to support it in the environmental needs that it has. So those are some examples. Like, also following the Lake Christine fire, I worked with the Colorado River District to quickly secure legal flows that we could release out of Root Eye if we were to get a flood that released ash into the river, so that we could flush that ash and that debris out of the river quickly with releases from Root Eye Reservoir. And so that's kind of the ways that I'm servicing Basalt and the Basalt community, but also I do other things like that throughout the Roaring Fork Watershed. I don't know why my clicker doesn't seem to want to respond. I've been working with Roaring Fork Conservancy on a couple of tools that just bring water information to those that are interested in it a little easier. And so, like I said, we have the Roaring Fork Watershed Plan. We've worked on this tool to try to bring that plan into a visual, interactive, web-based tool.
Crystal, April, I think, unfortunately, we're running a little bit short on time. We've got a couple of public hearings scheduled, and I know we want to quickly address our approval for our continued agreement here. So don't want to give you the bum's rush here, but if we could move it along, I got to watch our time schedule here a little bit.
Mayor, I move that the town council approve resolution number 38, series of 2020, approving an intergovernmental agreement to the Root Eye Water and Power Authority.
Second.
So that has been moved and seconded. Before we vote, April, do you have anything else you would like to offer? You know, this is, we're about to approve this, so maybe comments should be limited.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may briefly.
Go ahead, Jeff.
RWAPA exists as a pursuant to an intergovernmental agreement amongst various local governments in the Roaring Fork Valley. RWAPA went through a process of amending and updating what was a somewhat outdated IGA. All of the various jurisdictions provided comments on that IGA that were then incorporated into the draft that's in your packet. And unless April has anything else to add, that's been motioned and seconded to approve.
Okay. Pam, do you want to call the roll, or can we do this voice vote, Jeff?
Roll call, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Pam, please call our roll.
Certainly. Let's begin with Ryan Slack.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Kane.
Yes.
Thank you. Elise Hoddle.
Yes, and thank you, April. That was great information.
Thank you, Elise. Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you, Gary. Glenn Drummond.
Yes.
Thank you, Glenn. David Knight.
Yes, and thank you, April.
Thank you, David. Bill Knight and Bill Infante.
Yes, and thank you, April, and thank you, Ryan Slack, for representing Basalt on RWAPA.
Motion carries unanimously.
Can I ask one question before we leave this item? This is a very short question, should have a short answer. Last time I tuned in on this, I think the town of Basalt owned about 500 acre feet in Rudai. Rudai stores about 100,000 acre feet. Is that still operative, or did we buy more, or have we sold, or what's our current status on water ownership in Rudai?
Mr. Mayor, we actually have two contracts for Rudai Water that we amended not too long ago, and those are now, it was back in 2013, so there is no expiration date on these contracts. And for one of them, we get 100 acre feet annually, and for another, we get 200 acre feet annually. So we're, looking at a total of 500.
Okay, great.
And just for clarification, those contracts are for the town's augmentation plan for its municipal water supply. And, ensure that the town can divert and use its water and pray year round for domestic purposes.
Yeah, I just from time to time have laid awake at night thinking wondering if we could ever augment flows in the stressful times, but that's a conversation for another day. So thank you, April. This was a good update and a good reminder of what the Rudai Water and Power Authority is all about. We're pleased to continue our relationship, so thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And that is something that I'm looking into, is the ability to use that water for other purposes that Basalt might find beneficial.
Great. Thank you very much. So we will now turn to our next order of business, which is the third quarter financial report. Christy?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Okay, there we go. All right. So the first thing I'd note on these quarterly financials, once again, a great thank you to the prior work of the Finance Advisory Board and Council with the investment policy in creating the report and the transparent nature of the report. I really love it. I think it's easy to put together. It's easy to read for the public. I've heard some really good comments about it. So hopefully this is moving us once again in that direction of fiscal transparency, which is constantly our goal. And I believe this report does that. The other thing I'll note about the report is that it's along the same lines as what we've been discussing with our budget. There really isn't any change in the financial condition from the last time we've discussed this. We continue to discuss this monthly, at least, sometimes every other week. So I think we have a pretty good handle on our finances at this point in time. So there's no big surprises in the quarterly financial report. Just as noted here with our general fund revenue by source, 60% is sales tax is what we would anticipate. 17.5% is property tax. So most of the general fund sources of fund are those two sources once again. And our expenditures by department are listed here. Now, I think that really our police department is usually budgeted at closer to 25%. And some of these other departments are a little bit bigger, like your public works, but because of the timing of the report and when we finish off some of our summer projects, that sometimes these are underestimated at these quarter ends. So just a note on that. I'm not going to belabor the report. I mean, you guys are pretty used to it, but it does note sales tax strong at 85% of the budget, which is obviously over 3/4. So it shows that we're ahead once again, still keeping pace with that about 13% anticipated increase over budget. And and let's see, are there any questions on the general fund that you guys had specifically? Okay.
Any questions for Christie?
Okay. The restricted funds, the vast majority is taxes. Once again, showing in our pie graph here, 72% are for post-sales tax and also for lodging tax and tobacco tax. So that makes up the vast majority. There is a smaller percentage for building permit fees and for our RETAs. We did receive in quite a few RETAs actually in October after this report was ran for September 30 because of some of the developments that are coming in, Park Modern over there by Willis and that kind of thing. So receiving quite a few fees on that this month actually. But other than that, once again on the sales tax side, 86.6% received. It's pretty much tracking with where we anticipate. We could be even ahead of what we were looking at on our projection in our budget documents, but we'll see how the COVID impact play out through the end of the year, which could play into things. So, but so far it looks pretty good there. So the only other thing I'd note, our bond fund is repaying a bonded debt, and our water fund is for water service is received $726,000 year to date. We've got one more quarter to bill for, and that's a lower quarter because it's not a watering irrigation quarter, but still we're right on track with our water service. We looked at our receivables and we only are showing about, I think it was 13,000 or so that are late delinquent right now, which is actually pretty good given everything that's happening. So that's looking pretty strong also, relatively speaking. Close to an average amount that you would anticipate in your receivables balance right now. So that's it.
So questions for Christie on the third quarter report? I had just one kind of curiosity. I think I probably know the answer, but we had budgeted, I guess, $150K. We did $200,000 of interest earnings in 19. We're down to year-to-date 62, and it looks like we're gonna. Well, I mean, is that just reflective of the deterioration of bond and fixed income and interest rates declines?
I'm sorry, which one?
The interest income. It's
yes. Interest income is way off of last year. We're getting somewhere in the area of 5% on our investment last year, and now I'm going to show you just one thing here, Kane, that'll help with this is the little box we now put up here. It's very useful for this information.
Yeah.
You can see we're only getting plus we're getting 0.24%. That's 0.24% and 0.09%. The interest rates are just so low this year that we're just not getting any interest on our investment compared to.
Okay, that explains it. Now the rest of it all makes sense. So thank you very much. Any questions of council for Christie on our third quarter report?
Mayor Kane, this isn't on that subject, but could we just remind folks to please mute their phones when
some
we're
weird
I'm just getting
weird
some weird
feedback.
Thank you.
So with
Thanks,
that,
Christie.
I'm sorry?
I was just going to say thank you and good presentation.
Yeah.
Sure, looking through this.
Yeah, the reporting's excellent, guys. This is, really very thorough. We need the data here, so thank you.
I hate to call this out, but Briston. Who's Briston's iPhone?
That's where the noise is coming through.
That is the source of the interference.
Briston, can you hear us?
Yeah, I just took you off mute, so I'm on mute.
We can hear you.
Mute your phone, that would be great until you're up. Okay. Do you have some kind of detection software there or something, Glenn? That's a little spooky that you actually knew where that was coming from.
I could see it was the only one in the whole screen that's not muted.
Ah, very shrewd. Okay, thank you, guys. So, Christy, we will now move on to our next agenda topic, if there are no further questions. So our next order of business is our public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 22. It's an ordinance of the Town Council, Town of Basalt, Colorado, granting an extension of vested rights for the Stotz Mill development in Basalt, Colorado. James Lent and Jeff Conklin and Briston Peterson.
Yes, just a quick second. I'm going to share my screen. Sorry about that. Yes, this is a continued public hearing and second reading of an ordinance that would approve of a 12-month extension of vested rights on the Stotz Mill development. As was presented at the last meeting, the property subject to the extension request is the Stotz Mill property. I've got it up on the screen. It's about 18 acres of land, and it's on the east side of Southside Drive between the Southside subdivision and the Rio Grande Trail. As background, that was noted at first reading, the development project, let me move on, includes 113 dwelling units, a 4,000 square foot daycare facility to be built by the applicant, approximately 4.4 acres of parkland, with a north park that's more of a passive park to act as a buffer between the proposed development and south side, and then the south park, which is a more active park that's to include tennis courts and multi-purpose courts. And the unit breakdown that was approved back in 2017 when the applicant received vested rights included 64 multifamily units, 49 single-family and duplex lots, with the majority of those lots being small lots of 3,300 to 5,000 square feet to accommodate houses of between 1,300 and 2,400 square feet. In the development approvals from 2017, there were 19 category affordable housing units, multifamily units, and then 7 deed-restricted lots that were part of the program, 4 of which were to be sold at reduced max sales price to entities of the council's choosing. And so the applicant received in 2017 3 years of vested rights and contractual phasing to construct the North Park, the spine trail that goes down, as well as all the utilities and roads in the development within the 3-year period from the 2017 approval. And the applicants were getting ready this spring to commence the infrastructure work, but they had difficulty finalizing a ditch agreement with the Home Supply Ditch Company for the development's interface with the ditch on the north portion of the property. Here's the ditch. And it runs between Southside and Stotz Mill. It took about 6 months to kind of work through that, and staff believes that we're kind of at an amicable solution with the ditch company. We're getting really close. And so the applicants were not able to put in that infrastructure that they were required to do. So they, as noted at the last meeting, originally applied for an 18-month extension, but they reduced that since to a 12-month extension, which is the time period they believe that they can get the infrastructure completed in. As was noted at the last meeting, staff is supportive of the extension request. Staff felt that the project had considerable community benefit and is consistent with the master plan. The council approved the ordinance on first reading at the last meeting, and there haven't been any changes to the ordinance. As was noted at the last meeting, the only code changes that have happened since 2017 are the sustainable building regulation updates, as well as the wildfire protection ordinance that was approved recently, and those are included in the ordinance to be applicable to the development. At the last meeting, the council requested a construction schedule from the applicant. The applicant provided that, and it's included in your packet. It indicates that they're going to do the infrastructure in the next year, and then they've identified that they would start vertical construction on the multifamily development in April of 2021. So this evening, staff would suggest taking applicant comments and then providing public comment period, because it is a public hearing, and providing council discussion. And if you're comfortable, you could approve the ordinance. I'll stop sharing my screen. And Briston and Mark Chain, Briston Peterson and Mark Chain are here representing the applicant group. Do you guys have comments?
Mark, you're got your mute on.
Muted.
You're muted, Mark Chain. You gotta.
Yeah, hey, James.
Sorry. Go ahead, Briston.
Yeah, sorry for not being on mute there earlier, but, so what we've done since, I believe, James is correct. I think we're literally on the 1 yard line with the ditch company. There's a document that has been circulated, both to the town's council, that I believe is ready for signature. There has been a letter of credit that has been circulated to town staff that has been accepted by town staff. So we're in a position where we've also delivered the revised, updated record plat that I believe is in the hands for the mayor to execute. Our goal is to commence work the first Monday in November, and literally do the mass grading, the infrastructure, and put in the deep utilities through the winter. And if you have any questions on the schedule, I'd be more than glad to answer that.
All right. Are there any questions of council to staff or the applicant? At this point, I think we will take public comment. I know Mark Bell, who lives nearby there, would like to comment. I don't know if there are others. So at this point, Gary, did you have a comment?
I did have one. The whole thing with this ditch thing, you know, going forward, you know, the ditch could decide tomorrow to knock down a lot of that vegetation. So I think we just have to be prepared for a future where something happens to some of that vegetation. So anyway, I'm just bringing it up and going, yeah, we saved it for now, but I think, are we having an agreement? Is part of the ditch agreement that they don't pipe it and they don't cut out all that vegetation, or is it just to allow this development to continue?
It allows the development to continue, but it doesn't state that the ditch company can't remove the vegetation in the future or pipe it. It just doesn't require this developer to pipe it, which was where it was headed.
And I'll just add to that, the main purpose of that ditch modification agreement is to have the ditch company consent to locations of improvements within the ditch easement, including a crossing that goes over to Allison Lane, and then long-term obligations towards maintenance and so forth. We did get today comments on that agreement, and we'll be working as quickly as possible towards finalizing that.
Well, Kristen began the presentation with a comment that you're on the 1 yard line. I just hope you're not the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, well, to your point, Mayor, I thought I was on the 1 yard line quite a while ago, and one of the questions I asked staff is, in the event that this agreement can't get executed, I don't see any reason why. I think we're there, and I think town council was there. But in the event it can't get executed in a timely manner, is there a way for us to proceed with the project so that the tail is not wagging the dog? And that's a question I asked James. I don't know if it's appropriate to have that conversation with council, but I could share with you from the developer's perspective, we've done everything within our means to be accommodating to the ditch council's attorney, who just keeps manipulating documents and plain word semantics and all types of things that just keeps going on and on and on. And it's very frustrating when that 1 yard line just keeps moving on the developer.
Well, I think we'll leave that to James and Jeff to work through. That's probably not, appropriate for us to have a freewheeling conversation about process. So let's leave it at that. And at this point, I think we should take comment from the public and see.
Okay, so I'm gonna start my clock, but we have 3 individuals that wanted to speak, and I'm gonna do it in the order that they came to me. The first one is Mark Bell. So give me a second and I'll place that call.
Okay.
Susan, as you get him on the line, you might just apologize for the late hour. I don't know that he was aware of our gap in timing here.
Okay, and then just to make an announcement that if you want to speak to text 970-987-7010 or email planning@basalt.net. Sorry, I just lost that.
Hello, this is Mark.
Hey Mark, this is Susan Phelps. I'm in the Basalt Town Council meeting, and sorry we were running a little behind schedule for some reasons, but this is our public hearing time for Stotz Mill, and I don't know if you heard the mayor's comments. And normally we like to keep the comments to about 3 minutes or so. So you're on.
Sure, I've got about 2 minutes of comments here. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members, for granting me time tonight. My name is Mark Bell, and I live at 429 Meadowview Lane. I've been a resident of Southside for over 6 years. It's a wonderful, quiet, and safe, family-oriented neighborhood. The neighborhood children are often out and about, playing in the parks or riding around on the streets. Unfortunately, I feel the Stotz Mill project poses a serious threat to this fundamental character of our neighborhood. I've reviewed the plans and proposals, and I'm very concerned about the proposed density with regard to traffic capacity. Quite frankly, the plan does not sufficiently address or account for the inevitable dramatic increase in residential and construction traffic. High volume times in the morning and afternoon will overwhelm the traffic infrastructure, especially as commuters, high schoolers, and construction vehicles overlap. If you've ever tried to leave Southside after a BHS football game, you'll know what I mean in terms of how quickly it can get congested and backed up. It's one lane until the park and ride, which means that all DV, down valley, and Basalt traffic will clog up everything, even for the up valley traffic. This will happen twice a day, 5 days a week. My concern for our neighborhood is that when this happens, the Southside residential streets become a shortcut. I have serious concerns about the safety of the kids and the fundamental character of the neighborhood with cars zipping around to beat traffic. The plan simply does not adequately solve this problem.
And with this in mind, I ask that you decline the proposal for an extension to the Stotz Mill project. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
So our next person that we're calling is Christo Halsey. And I'll try to place that call.
Hello, this is Chris.
Hi, this is Susan Phelps from the town of Basalt. You're in the Basalt Town Council meeting and the public hearing on Stotz Mill, and we understand that you had some comments that you would like to enter into the public record.
Absolutely, and I'll be brief, but I did want to comment as a resident of the neighborhood.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, my name is Chris Halsey. I've been in the area for about 30 years, and my wife and I moved to the south side area. We felt it was, you know, a safe and quiet neighborhood to raise kids. I'm a ski patrol director at the Aspen Skiing Company, and one of my jobs is to recognize traffic patterns and create safe plans for skiers and snowboarders on our slopes. And I just feel like I can recognize issues with traffic patterns fairly well, even though it's cars versus skiers. I could see that, in my opinion, the south side area is becoming maxed out with the new commercial and residential building. And that, you know, the construction traffic and real estate growth, you know, has obviously increased dramatically in the last 5 years. Every year we do notice, you know, more traffic, cars are going faster. Sometimes it's even difficult to find a place to park. And, you know, my family and I use the parks in the area, the bike park over in Basalt, the skateboard park, and you know, we're on the sidewalks and crosswalks every day. And so, you know, traffic safety is my main concern here. But I also did want to point out, you know, we've noticed as residents for a while that, you know, the Elgibel-Willits area has really sprawled into one big continuous neighborhood kind of. And you know, one of the things we enjoy about Basalt is the open space between neighborhoods. And we feel like, you know, the Stotz Mill project would, you know, limit some of this open space feel. But in closing, I just want to, you know, note that the increased traffic and the sprawl on South Side, to us, it feels like it's pretty maxed out already. You know, there are times you have to wait for 3 cycles to get through the Highway 82 light to get to Basalt or to go westbound on 82. And, you know, these are our main concerns, and I just wanted to, you know, have you guys hear a comment about that. That's all I have for now, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for the comments. Susan, we have one more?
Yes, we got one more. This is from Mike Steiner, and I'll place his call. And then I'll double check that I didn't get any emails or text messages while this is going on.
This is Mike.
Hi, Mike. This is Susan Phelps over at Basalt Town Hall. We're in our public hearing on Stotz Mill, and we understand that you would like to make a few comments.
Hey, Susan, thanks for getting back to me. And thanks, council, for listening to public comment. I'll keep my comments pretty brief. I'd like to voice opposition against moving forward with Stotz Mill. I'm a Southside Basalt resident, and I guess my chief concern is existing infrastructure here with roads and having a lot of the large trucks, construction vehicles going through what I believe to be a one road kind of in and out system. We do have a lot of families here with young children, including myself, and with all the planned construction for Basalt Vista phases 2 and 3 in this large residential project, I feel like it's going to be kind of a never-ending traffic and construction issue for the town of Basalt. Just wanted to voice a comment, and also I'd like to give praise to Basalt Town Council and Basalt Town staff for all that you do and keeping this a great community to live in. So thanks for hearing me out. I appreciate it, and thanks for the call, Susan.
You bet.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for the comment.
Okay, thanks, Mike. And I'm just gonna double check that I didn't get any more emails. If I didn't get any emails, then I understand there's no text messages coming in, so I think we're good to close the public comment portion of the meeting.
All right, thank you. I will show that the public hearing is closed as of 7:20, or 7:40. I would just like to make a comment to the public that called in and residents of Southside. The matter before us tonight is not one of whether we approve or not approve of Stotz Mill. The Stotz Mill development was approved in final form some time ago. What's before us tonight is a much narrower question. This is a fine-tuned question about continuation of a vested right. So the matters of community character and traffic generation and parks, fortunately or unfortunately, were thoroughly vetted and discussed over a multi-year period of time. And so that is not really the question that's before the council tonight. It's whether the applicant has a legitimate hardship in having been able to commence work in a timely manner. That's the scope of our review here. So if we vote for this, it's certainly not a vote to ignore your concerns. I'm sure they were voiced and heard on multiple occasions during the public hearing process. So we care for all of our citizens. We care for your neighborhoods, and we are here in a much narrower context than might appear. So I just want to make that clear for the record. So comments from council, questions of the applicant or staff. Everybody's seen the construction schedule. Glenn, I think it was you that requested it last time. So if there are questions, let's have them now. Any question? Hands up. I think Ryan Slack's hand is up.
James, could you quickly remind me of the traffic improvements they do need to make? I know we did address this during the original hearing, and sorry, my dog's trying to join. And so it might help some of the public understand what's truly going on.
Sure. There was a traffic study that was done in 2015 and then updated again in 2017, I believe it was. And as part of that traffic study, it was for all of Southside. There were improvements that were identified that were laneage improvements, so adding a lane in and adding a lane out of Southside at Basalt Avenue, which were actually done as part of the pedestrian underpass. And then there was a mini roundabout improvement that was identified at Basalt Avenue and Cody Lane to better organize traffic in that area, to keep the intersection operating at an acceptable level of service based on traffic engineering standards. And so there were a cost estimate that was put to those improvements. And then there was a fair share requirement on the developments that were previously approved, including Stotz Mill, to pay into the improvement that was identified. It was identified also that the use of that money could be used for other purposes if there was a better solution that was thought of before the time came to need that solution. So there's some flexibility in using those funds, but that was kind of the overall concept. And then, you know, in the long term, we also have in the master plan the concept of doing the South Side underpass under Highway 82 between South Side Drive and Midland Avenue by the post office. That project is on the state's funding list in the new 2020 state transportation plan, but there's a big price tag to that, so that could be a ways down the line. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Any further questions for staff or the applicant? David Knight, sir.
I don't know if this was ever covered when this was passed, but I heard the concern about secondary streets and traffic being pushed onto that due to traffic on South Side. Is there a mitigation plan for that? And if not, could there be, such as restricting traffic on those secondary streets to local traffic only?
Well, originally, as part of the several applications, you know, there's been multiple applications on this property over time. There was originally a vehicular access connection between the Stotz Mill property that was proposed and the South Side subdivision on Allison Lane. Through those development reviews over time, it was reduced down to just a pedestrian connection between the Stotts Mill development and the South Side subdivision, with an emergency one-lane access potential if there was, you know, some sort of accident that happened on South Side Drive and they needed to get emergency access through there. So it was reduced down to just a pedestrian connection between South Side and the Stotts Mill development. There wasn't discussion at the 2017 review toward making the streets in South Side just local traffic only. I suppose that could be up for consideration.
We could add that as part of the construction management plan.
Yeah, we could, you know, as part of the construction management plan, there could be the potential to require that at least during the construction phases.
Okay, thanks.
Any additional questions for staff or applicant from council? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion. This motion would be to extend vested rights for an additional year. So, this presents an interesting situation. Jeff, I have not encountered this one in my long tenure as mayor, but
Can I?
Pardon?
Can
Go ahead, Glenn.
So I motion to approve this on the first reading due to the fact that I believe Jeff Conklin informed us that there's, how much legal ramification are we dealing with here? As far as like, what do we have to do? How's this end up for the applicant? Where are we at?
Right, so the vested rights period is also part of the contractual phasing for the development and tied in with the annexation of the property. And so the vested rights, as we've discussed, insulate the developer from future changes to the land use code that might affect their project. It allows them to pursue and complete a site-specific development plan. And here, if there was not an extension of vested rights, would create some issues potentially underneath the annexation agreement. But I think there would need to be some subsequent action of council related to how that project may or may not be able to proceed. But it would, at a minimum, kind of create some ambiguity in that agreement. And so that.
Did they stop?
Yep.
I hope.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID. Please enter the meeting password followed by pound. You are in the meeting now. There are more than 20 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded.
I just asked Pam and she could explain it, but we did have Pro Velocity come in and they made some changes to the firewall. It sounds like that they had found some potential issue there, well, lasted for a couple hours anyway, but doesn't seem like it was the remedy. So they were here tonight for an hour sitting in on a meeting to see if something happened, see if they could catch it, but.
So we're back live here. Jeff, we didn't pick up kind of your last
Yeah,
statement.
I think the last word we heard was ambiguity.
Yeah, so that was about where I was wrapping it up. That's kind of how this fits within the overall development approvals framework. In terms of, as a procedural matter, if there's not a motion, the action would fail for lack of motion. If council needed more information, as in terms of, more specifically, what is the, if council needs more information related to this decision in the event that this is not approved, another option would be to continue the public hearing until our next meeting, so that staff or the applicant provide additional information or analysis that might be needed.
Well, in the interest of trying to break the ice, I will make a go at this, and I would make the motion, move that town council adopt ordinance number 22, series of 2020 on second reading, and see if I can scare up a second for that. Is there a second?
I'll second you, Bill.
Who is that?
Me.
Glenn Drummond.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded, and we will, at this point, unless there's discussion on the motion, were there any questions of clarification on the motion?
Can we move the motion for a second?
Is the mayor allowed to make a motion? Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody else wants to. I think is the.
I just didn't know. I was checking.
Can I pose one question to council?
Sure.
This was approved in 2009. again in 2017. I think it's important that we look at the history and we look at the amount of vetting process that has gone into it and evaluate all of those things whole. This is simply an extension of vested rights, as Mayor informed us. We're not talking about a new proposal. We're not talking about a new development. This worked for 11 plus years. It has been vetted in all sorts of ways. And granted, should it have taken this long to get done? I think we all voiced our opinion. No, it shouldn't have. But let's look at it in that context.
Any further discussion on the motion, David Knight? And then I think Ryan has a comment, maybe. Go ahead, David.
Is it permissible to add that restriction for local traffic only on secondary streets to this motion? That's a question for Jeff, and if it is permissible, I would ask that we add that.
So you have to ask me if I was going to amend my motion.
Well, Mayor, would you be willing to amend your motion to restrict the secondary streets off the south side in the existing neighborhood to local traffic only?
Yes, I would agree to that friendly amendment. So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on?
Doesn't the second have to also agree with the change in motion?
Yes.
Glenn needs to second that amendment.
Yeah, Glenn, are you okay with the amended motion?
Absolutely, I agree with that amended motion.
And just for matter procedure, the mayor is a full participating member of the council, unlike mayors in some jurisdictions that are just a ceremonial head and don't actually vote.
So we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, I would ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Certainly. Elise Huddle?
Yes. I have reservations, but yes.
Okay, let's go to Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you. Bill Infante?
I share Elise's yes with reservations.
Yes, thank you. Ryan Slack?
Yes.
Thank you. Bill Kane?
Yes.
David Knight?
Yes.
And Glenn Drummond?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thanks, everybody. That concludes that item. No worse than a root canal, so we'll get on to the next one. So the next order of business is public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 21, series of 2020. Ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, approving amendments to the municipal code of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, amending Table 1 in Town Code, Section 16-31, R4MD, Medium Density Zone District, to add a maximum size for a two-bedroom, two-level units in 100% deed-restricted projects. James.
Yes, thank you. This is a continued public hearing and second reading of a code amendment request submitted by Habitat for Humanity. And as the mayor noted, this is a request for a code amendment to the R4MD zone district to add language to the R4MD zone district, adding a maximum unit size of 1,235 square feet for a maximum square footage for two-level, two-bedroom units in fully deed-restricted projects. And as was noted at first reading at the last meeting, the reason the applicant is making this request relates to the Basalt Vista Affordable Housing Project behind the high school. As was presented at the last meeting, a portion of the units in the project are for employees of Picken County, and then a portion of the units are for employees from the school district. And the project is getting towards its final phase here to build the last 9 units. And of those last 9 units, 12 are for the school district employees. And as was discussed at the last meeting, the school district has found that there's demand issues with the mix, and so they're looking to convert a couple of the 3-bedroom duplexes units that are still to be built to 2-bedroom units to better meet the school district's demand. And in conjunction with that, they're proposing to reduce the price point on those units to 70% of the area median income to better fit the teachers' salaries. The resulting 2-bedroom units, however, from the conversion would be over the maximum 2-bedroom unit size by 85 square feet. And so the applicants requested the code amendment to add the 2-level, 2-bedroom unit size of 1,235 square feet to the zone district for projects that are 100% deed-restricted housing. As was discussed at the last meeting, the Basalt Affordable Community Housing Committee, BAC, the P&Z, and staff were supportive of the proposed amendment. The council approved the ordinance on first reading at the last meeting, and there haven't been any changes to the ordinance since the first reading. So this evening, staff would recommend taking applicant comments, taking public comments as it is a public hearing, and then providing council discussion. Ultimately, if you're comfortable with the approval ordinance, you could approve the ordinance on second reading. I'll stop sharing my screen here. And this evening we have Gail Schwartz and Bo Blodgett, and I think Jake was on here as well from Habitat. Gail, would you guys like to have comments?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Council. A late hour, yet I appreciate all of you. And just a small point of clarification in James' summary, and thank James and Susan for working with us on this modification of our entitlement of we're really foregoing two bedrooms, and we had an entitlement for over 400 square feet, of which these units, we're trying to reduce the size to accommodate the demand. So the last phase of the project is phase 3, and we have 9 total units, and of that, 7 units will be for the Roaring Fork School District. And because of COVID, the impact to the district, the impact to the employees, the impact to the budget, that we feel to be able to really support the teachers and the staff and really provide more affordability with these units, and to provide a size that will accommodate entry level into the units of these 7 units, that we're going through a pretty aggressive marketing campaign, which really will support the teachers and their decision making around the units, their affordability, and making this a long-term asset of the district, so of the teachers of the district. So with that, I really would appreciate either hearing from Jake or Israeli, who is on the phone, who is our construction supervisor at the site, and we'll talk about why we wanted to make these changes, and this being the most efficient way to make the changes, the most cost-effective mechanism. And then Bo Blodgett, who has worked so closely with the school district to identify unit costs, and by reducing this project to a 70% AMI, and really the project included 80, 100, 120% AMI with its initial approvals, 70% will require even a further subsidy by Habitat. And in closing my remarks, I really would look forward to the council coming and seeing these units, this community, and what an incredible contribution it makes to ownership affordable housing in Basalt. And I'm speaking with James, and hopefully this, we can set up a tour for both yourselves and Bach, so you can see what incredible opportunity and quality we've invested into these homes for our teachers and our local workforce. So maybe Jake would have a comment, if that's okay with James?
Thanks for the offer, Gail. I'm sure there'll be some interest in coming out and touring around. So Jake, did you want to make a comment?
Sure. Yeah, for some reason I can't get my video on, but I'll just leave it for a question. I think James and Gail covered it, but I'll just quickly state that we have looked, at this in every possible way with our architects and engineers to try and find the best way to do it, and this we feel is the best way. So, and that's why we're here tonight trying to amend this, to keep the consistency in the neighborhood and keep the costs down, and also accommodate the school's needs. And I'll pass it to Bo if he has anything.
Yeah, sure. So, we've kind of presented this to the teachers in terms of we have 2 bedrooms and we've added affordability at 70% AMI, and what we've seen is overwhelmingly positive response. And so I think what we've kind of accomplished here and what we're proposing will really help fit the needs of the teachers. And I think that's all I'd like to add at this point.
Comments of council for the applicant or for James? If there are no questions, I'd be pleased to entertain a motion.
But you're gonna open the public hearing first.
Oh, forgot about that. That's right. Okay, so at this
Can
point...
I ask a quick question, though?
Yeah, go ahead, Elise.
I'm looking in the memo for it now, and I can't find it, but wasn't there something about changing to 70% AMI or something like that? Is that part of this or not?
Yes, we are offering a 70% AMI category. So yeah, that's part of it's not part of this amendment, but it is part of what we are doing to make these more affordable for teachers.
So
Is that...
Go ahead.
Sorry, Gail.
No, I'm sorry, Commissioner. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So so the request is for exceeding the maximum square footage for the unit. And in addition to changing, we are also changing and creating more affordability for the units, whether there are 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, or 4 bedrooms. We're moving, and the price will reflect the income level of the family that's purchasing. So the same unit could go to a 70% AMI family or 100% AMI family, but the price will be different for those 2 families. So that's where we are. So we maintain the same quality of the unit and the same configuration and the same quality of the neighborhood, but we're going to further subsidize, as I mentioned at the last hearing. This project will be subsidized in excess of $9 million to create 27 permanently affordable ownership housing units.
So,
thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, just to add on to that, this really came about from us wanting to provide more of a subsidy and also add those 2 bedrooms, which kind of better fit the market. And believe it or not, having that larger square footage was the most cost-effective way to reach that goal. And so, we looked at design costs, we looked at various ways to get that 2 bedroom, and this is absolutely the easiest and most cost-effective way.
Okay, so at this point, we will open this public comment. It is now 8:08 p.m. So Susan, if you would give people instructions for calling in.
Yes, please email planning@basalt.net or text 970-987-6000. 7010 with your name and your phone number, and we'll call you. And just to note that we haven't had any public comments on this, either during the P&Z public hearing or at the first public hearing that we had here 2 weeks ago. And so we have about a minute left in our clock.
Jake, we can see you now. Be careful.
Believe it or not, my mouse was in my laptop bag with the button being held down, and that was why I could not figure out how to get my mouse to click the video.
Whatever can happen will happen.
Well, as I said, Mr. Mayor, we so welcome the council to come and tour with us. We've gone through, it's been such a commitment and such a great partnership and a great asset, and we are even making just tremendous headway with making the units more affordable, and we want to share that with you.
Yeah, thank you, Gail. Yeah,
Good.
I just think, you know, it's such a beautifully designed project, great location. You know, I just think everybody's a winner as a result of this. So, really appreciate Habitat, and we're lucky to have you in our community. I'm sure we all feel that. So, we just have to go through these nettlesome details sometimes.
That it is.
So I haven't received any emails, and I don't believe that any text came in, right, Ryan? So I think we're good to go on the public comment part.
Thank you. Then we'll show the public hearing closed at 8:10 p.m. and ask the council if there is interest in a motion or further discussion. Or Glenn Drummond.
Mayor, I move that town council adopt ordinance number 21, series of 2020 on second reading.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. Did you find out who seconded it, Pam?
Sounded like Elise.
I think she nipped it by the wire there, yeah. So we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Absolutely. Let's begin with Bill Infante.
Yes, I approve.
Thank you, Bill. Let's see, Bill King.
Yes.
Thank you, Bill. Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Thank you, Ryan. Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you, Gary. Lise Hoddle.
Yes.
David Knight.
Yes.
And Glenn Drummond.
Yes.
Got everybody? Motion carries.
Much. Thanks, Habitat. We'll see you again sometime. But good luck with completing this guy, and hopefully you find some happy buyers or tenants for the project. So thanks for your efforts, and we'll be talking frequently and often.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next item is our item 7D. This is a public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 23, series 2020. Ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, amending the Basalt Municipal Code to repeal and replace Article 10, fire restrictions under Chapter 7, health, sanitation, and animals. Chief Greg Knott.
Actually, Mayor, just a point on the agenda, we missed 7C, and we have applicants that are on the line.
Oh, sorry. I was hoping Clay went home, but I guess he's still there. Okay.
He might have dropped off. I don't see his name there anymore, so.
So, Chief, we're gonna have to hold off for a minute. We got Clay Crossland. We can keep this man waiting. He'll tell us here in a minute. That's long. Okay, so excuse me, we got to go to item 7C. That's public hearing, first reading ordinance number 24, series of 2020, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, granting an extension of vested rights for the Basalt Mini Storage Expansion Project in Basalt, Colorado. James, why don't you introduce the item?
Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen real quick here. This is a public hearing and first reading of an ordinance, as the mayor indicated, that would approve of a one-year extension of vested rights on the Basalt mini storage expansion. As background, the applicant South Fork LLC and North Fork LLC received approval in 2017 to expand the Basalt mini storage by adding 4 buildings of self-storage. Here on the site plan, this is the existing Basalt mini storage. This is Southside Drive coming down towards the high school. And this is the location of the first building that was built. And as I indicated, there were 4 buildings that were part of the approvals. They received granted vested rights and contractual phasing, and specifically, it was in the letter of request that was part of your packet. The applicant was required to provide a building permit within 1 year of the 2017 approval on the first building. And then the applicants did that and constructed the first building, which is located where my cursor is. And then they were required by the 2017 ordinance to get a building permit on the second building within 2.5 years of first getting the permit on the first building of mini storage. And so that requires the applicant to get a building permit on the second building before January 12th of 2021, so this coming January. The approvals required all 4 buildings to be built in a certain time period, 9.5 years. And the applicant requests a 1-year extension of vested rights so that the building permit on the second building wouldn't be required to be obtained until January 12th of 2022, so a year pushback on that. The applicant's primary reason for the request in reduction in the vested rights is for a reduction in demand due to COVID, and the applicant can speak more to that as part of his comments. The draft ordinance that you have in your packet would approve of the applicant's request for an extension of vested rights for a year. It also applies the updated sustainable building regulations as well as the wildfire protection regulations that were enacted since the 2017 approvals. There's also a condition that's included in the draft ordinance that would require the applicant to retrofit the first building that was built already with window film that would reduce the light transmission by 50% for the clear story windows that are up on the upper floor. We had some complaints after the building was built about the light transmission coming out of that, so we think as staff that would help kind of reduce that issue. And then the condition also requires the remaining 3 buildings to also implement that film on the clear story windows. So this evening, staff would suggest taking applicant comments, taking public comments as it is a public hearing, and then providing council discussion. If you're comfortable with the ordinance and the conditions, you could approve it on first reading and set and continue the public hearing and second reading for November 10th. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen. And we have Clay Crossland here this evening, as well as J. Ray Barlow, representing the applicant group.
Welcome, Clay. Would you like to address the council and make any comments?
Well, Clay, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Clay. You got to turn your mic on.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
For the record, I'm Clay Crossland, managing partner for North Fork and South Fork LLC. Thanks for hearing this review or this request for a 1-year extension of vested rights. The only thing that I would add to James's introduction is that during phase 1, we overcame a number of hardships. First of all, The approval document required a number of documents that had to be drafted and approved by the town. And as we all know, we were in a construction period where everybody was maxed out. It was a challenge to get our attorneys to draft the documents, to get the town to review the documents. It went on for an extended period of time, and in fact, the town granted an extension to complete those documents. Once we did that, the approval that we obtained for the 4 buildings required an extensive amount of upfront utility expansion. In other words, the approval required us to completely loop the water system, which was over 1,000 feet. And in doing that, together with other utilities, we got off to a very slow start in our construction for the phase 1 building. We finally overcame that. Another thing we had to do was build a road that looped for the fire department to meet their requirement to serve all 4 buildings, not just one. So once we did that, we finally obtained approval, or we finally got CO in July of last year. Our plan was to immediately break ground in the spring of this year. Of course, what happened then was the COVID-19 virus came about right when we would have wanted to start building. We became nervous. Our bank became nervous. We decided not to start. We were waiting to see what developments would occur, and here we are today. Even if we had decided to start, we've lost the major part of this building season. So simply, we're here to request a 1-year extension. Here we are.
All right, thank you. Mr. Barlow, you have any comments for the council before we move on? Hearing none. Gary Taylor.
Oh, I'm here. I'm actually here.
Did we get dropped?
Stop.
Lost my little thing.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID. Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Please enter the meeting password followed by pound. You are in the meeting now. There are 16 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded.
I would concur with that as well.
So, we dropped the Zoom call right when J. Ray was just saying, I'm here, but he didn't make any comments. So that's what we have to rewind
Susan,
to.
can you hear?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
Okay, you can resume.
So all I was saying is that I concur with Clay. The construction environment was challenging. We experienced numerous delays on another project. We just finished that in the town of Basalt, probably 2 months after we had anticipated. And so it has been challenging, not with just personnel and managing people on site, but supply chains and securing materials and moving forward in any sort of timely fashion. So it's been quite a challenge, not just on a local basis. It's nationally. Again, securing materials and equipment have been problematic for us.
Gary, did you have a question of the applicant or James?
I did. I said, you know, I appreciate the comments of, you know, tough construction climate, but, you know, for me, really, truly, let's get it right for this extension. And I believe like that light pollution thing should be on all sides, not just one side of the whatever you're calling those things.
Window.
Clear story windows.
Clear story,
Yeah. I just believe that we should do the whole thing. You know, I'm totally okay with extending it for 1 year, but I definitely, I want to do at least the whole thing, all those windows. So I was hoping to get the rest of the council to go along with that, but being okay with the 1 year thing.
And Clay can clarify. I wasn't involved in the original design, but I think the Clara story was actually part of the design to make the building fit in as far as, you know, a historic or, you know, a barn-like shape. So it's an unintended consequence, and I think it's a very simple solution to solve that going forwards and backwards.
Okay.
I guess I'm a little confused as to Gary's comment. We have agreed.
Let me clarify. I think his impression is that you would just put this optical film on the windows that face the south side. I think his request is that you apply that shading film around the entire clear story window.
Yes,
Gary?
that's it.
In other words, on both sides of the building. Is that?
Gary, why don't
Yes.
you?
That's all I'm asking.
Okay. Well, I mean, may I hear the rest of the comments?
Sure, let's, any other comments, questions? So Glenn and then Elise.
So, I mean, to what Gary said, like, we do have a dark night skies ordinance, and that could be considered light pollution. I'm behind him on that.
Okay. David, or no, Elise, I think was up.
Actually, David can go because I'm still trying to, I forgot what I was going to ask.
I didn't have any questions there.
David got caught in an argument bit there. He was scratching his ear.
Oh, I remember. Okay, I remember.
You remember?
I remember.
Okay.
So I just want to understand that if we grant this extension of vested rights, you're still going to be evaluating whether there's a market for additional buildings at some future time. It sounds like from what I'm reading here. Is that correct?
Well, given the events of the last 12 months, I'm only being prudent in protecting the interest of my partners and also addressing the concerns of my banks and so forth. It's our intention to proceed as fast as possible. There's no reason to wait. I hope to be under construction next year early.
Well, I'm partly asking that question because it's a lead-in. I'm going to ask about the dirt piles. I have friends that live across the street, so I'm kind of personally aware of the dirt piles. And I understand that you are meeting the height requirements, but it's stated here that you're going to be using the topsoil for landscaping with the additional buildings. My concern is if the additional buildings don't happen, are we just going to have big dirt piles there?
Well, I just don't see that happening. And the dirt piles that are there are not unique. I mean, any construction site's going to have this type of construction piles. You look around at Willis, the Roaring Fork the Roaring Fork Club, which just did a huge expansion, had all kinds of dirt piles around. It's in our interest to get rid of the dirt piles as soon as possible.
Well, then we're on the same page.
Good. Any further questions for the applicant or James? Hearing none, is there a motion?
And Mayor, just a reminder again that we have a public hearing on this.
Correct. So let's do the public hearing first then. We will open the public hearing at 8:29 p.m. and Susan will provide instructions for calling in.
Okay. If you could email planning@basalt.net or text 970-987-7010 with your name and your phone number, and we'll give you a call. I went ahead and started the clock, and we didn't receive any questions before the meeting or any other requests to speak on the item like we did on Stotz Mill. So, let me just double check my emails. So I didn't receive any emails and we didn't receive any text that anybody wanted to speak for this item.
Okay, then with that, I'll declare the public hearing closed at 8:31 p.m. Gary Tenenbaum had his hand up, so Gary, did you ask a question or make a comment?
No, I just make a motion to approve on first reading, set the second reading. What was the date?
November 10th.
And you're continuing and setting the public hearing.
And continuing and setting the public hearing for November 10th with the addition of film, plastic, whatever you call it, on the entire upper window for all the buildings.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. Pam, please call the roll.
Okay, begin with Glenn Drummond,
No.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
Bill Infante,
Yes.
Gary Tenenbaum,
Yes.
Elise Hoddle.
Yes.
Thank you, Elise. Bill Kane
Yes.
and David Knight.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
Okay, thank you. Clay, we'll see you, your smiling face again on November 10th.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
We are now on to item 7D. So, both the chief is there. He is. So I will reread this. This is item 7D, public hearing and second reading for ordinance 23, series of 2020. An ordinance of the town council of the town of Basalt, Colorado, amending the Basalt Municipal Code to repeal and replace Article 10, fire restrictions under Chapter 7, health, sanitation, and animals. Greg Knott, Chief of Police.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. We last met on October 13th for first reading. Tonight is a public hearing and second reading of the ordinance. There's been no revisions, additions to the ordinance that was presented to you on October 13th. So I'm here for questions and to the public hearing. No other presentation for you, sir.
Great, thank you. Could I ask just a kind of interesting question? We went to stage 2, then it snowed 8 inches. what actually happened there?
Yeah, so,
Go to stage 2 and then it snowed, or?
yeah, Picken County went into stage 2. We're still in stage 2 in Picken County. Eagle County is still in stage 1. On the day that Picken went to stage 2, there was a red flag warning, which bumped up Eagle County's restrictions that day. But we are, even with the snow, we're still under fire restrictions.
Okay, interesting deal. Thank you. So, questions, comments of council? Hearing none, I will open, I better have this right, and open the public hearing, Susan. The second reading. I think I got it this time. So I will open the public hearing at 8:35 p.m.
Okay, if you would like to comment during the public hearing, please email planning@basalt.net or text 970-987-7010 with your name and your phone number, and we'll give you a call. Again, we didn't receive any questions before the public meeting or any emails on this either.
Do you want to wait, or shall we proceed?
No, the clock's going, so we're still going to proceed for another 45 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, our clock went off, and I didn't receive any emails, and we didn't get any text for people wanting to speak on this item.
Thank you very much. So the public hearing will close at 8:37, and I would ask for a motion to approve the ordinance.
Mayor, I move the town council adopt ordinance number 23, series of 2020 on second reading.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Pam, please call the roll.
Okay, let's begin with Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you. Ryan Slack,
Yes.
Bill Kane,
Yes.
Elise Huddle,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Glenn Drummond,
Glenn, are you on there?
there he is. Thank you, Glenn. And Bill Infante.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
It's going to work better, so appreciate your efforts.
Oh, no. No, 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 no.
Better yell at Brian, I think he's. That's what, 3 tonight?
4. This is 4, right? Oh.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by enter your participant. Please enter the meeting password followed. You are in the meeting now. There are 14 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded.
The voices of the public when they call in, via that route. So is there another solution? Yeah. I mean, we're gonna have to investigate that because this is extremely aggravating, as I'm sure you all feel. So.
Is it a voice modem? Is that what keeps clunking out?
It was, so all the phone line, phone lines go over the internet, but, the latest thing they did was check this firewall, and they're like, oh, let's fix this issue, this could be it. Apparently it's not.
Well, the other...
What they did before was check, shoot, what was the first thing they did? I just had it in my head and I lost it.
Well, the second thing they did was that, and I don't know if you guys were communicating while I was off, but the backup, the timing of our computer server backup was during the meeting, so they moved it in the early morning or something so that we wouldn't have that issue. And then the other one was there was a lousy connection to the phone, and we fixed that one. Was there something else, Pam?
Those are the main ones that they've tried so far. They said something about, that's why Chantry was here tonight, was checking packets, should a call drop, and he was not here when any of the calls dropped, so.
Sounds like it's time for copper wire.
Tried and true.
Smoke signal.
We'll double down on it because it's not.
Could we try a cell phone?
Potentially. We have an analog line here that I asked if we could try that. I'm not sure where we are with that or not, but we have one analog line left.
So we can try one thing at a time. We just have to do a process of elimination.
Yeah.
Are we back up yet?
Yeah, we're back up, Susan, or?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think we had a motion and a second for resolution 37. And you were about to make a presentation on our schedule, Ryan and Jeff. Face coverings.
Yeah, so this is a continuation of our face covering resolution that we had initially passed back in May. We were doing month-long extensions initially, and then as of the last extension we did, we went for 3 months. It just seemed that this was going to be something that was going to be with us for some time, and we are proposing a similar extension now, so that would essentially take us through January, I believe it is, and then we could bring it back to you all. If there are other suggestions, I mean, I think going back to the month is just too short. Once again, we had proposed at one point in time just keeping it in place until such time the council rescinded it, but we haven't had comment from folks that are opposed to this after the initial issues we had. I think the science is catching up, and there's pretty good evidence that wearing a mask is going to protect people and at the end of the day save lives. And so that's basically it in a nutshell. I don't believe we've changed anything else at this point in time. Jeff, any other comment from you?
I think that covered it.
Ryan, does our ordinance differ radically from the governor's ordinance?
No. The state's ordinance, or excuse me, the state's public health order that requires face coverings is for kids. Kids 10 and under are not required to wear it, whereas we have it, under 2 years old. So not sure what the distinction was on that one, but the thing that we have been doing is essentially mirroring what we're seeing in the valley. So I think that's kind of a more important point, is what are our neighbors doing here? I'm not as much concerned as what's happening in Denver as the Roaring Fork Valley. So I would suggest we keep that one in. We know that even younger children who are wearing masks at school all day long at this point can also spread the virus.
I was going to, oh, sorry.
That's David's next.
Yeah, I think we should keep it in line so that the kids in school, if that's in fact one of the differences, so they're wearing masks by ordinance and by, order of the school district policy. That makes a lot of sense.
Jeff, did you want to make a comment?
No, I think Brian covered it. Thanks.
Okay, great. The only thought I would have about this is that, the curve is not going in the right direction right now, and we're only at Halloween, not even at Halloween. So I definitely will vote for this, but I wonder if we shouldn't keep a close eye on how we're doing relative to the meter. And if we see a significant change of circumstance, then I think we ought to give thought to whether we want to make face coverings mandatory in the central business districts of both Willits and the downtown. I know Aspen's gone to that system. It was pretty comforting to see that this summer, especially when we had so many people. Maybe it's not an issue because of our density at one time, but I think it's something to have in our back pocket and be thinking about revisit if we have a serious decline in the condition here. So, we've got to get the word out and make sure that people do the fundamentals here, social distance, wash hands. We got a winter coming on here that's going to be pretty challenging, so that's my only thought about it. Elise?
I think actually that Glenn had his hand up first.
That's very considerate. Go ahead, Glenn.
Thanks, Elise. My only question was, private gatherings were cut down to 10 with the, limit of 2 different families. How does this apply to restaurants and bars?
Are you talking about this as far as the gatherings go? How does that apply to restaurants?
It has less to do with our mask ordinance. I'm sorry, totally a little off subject, but I'm just curious, when we're talking about this all-encompassing, how do we control this? I'm a little confused even from the city. Privately you can have 10 people, but in a bar you can have 75 or 100. I'm just confused.
Yeah, I think, Glenn, the issue there is that the evidence that we're getting through contact tracing, throughout the state, probably throughout the nation for that matter, is that people getting together in homes where they're meeting with mixed families and things like that, we're seeing an uptick in spread. And that's not to say that you can't get it while in a business, but I think the idea in the business is that you're walking in with a mask, you're getting up to use the restroom, you're in a mask, and when you're sitting at a table where there are limitations on the size of that table, you're then socially distanced from the next group. So I think they're effectively mimicking that, that setup in a way. But of course, in a home, if people, I'm thinking that people are showing up without the mask, never putting it on, probably hugging, sharing, food, and it's just those numbers can exceed what they've considered to be safe in those public environments. So that's the best explanation I can offer for now.
Yeah, and I would just briefly add to that the way that CDPHE order is structured, it's that person limitation applies to public and private gatherings, but not to the separate, distinct types of functions or things that are regulated by the order that would have their own specific provisions, like restaurants, critical business functions, the governmental functions, things like that. So it's, as Ryan said, it applies to those public and private gatherings as a use category.
Further questions, discussion? Elise?
So I know I was the one who originally was against having an indefinite ordinance, but I'm wondering whether it makes sense to revisit this conversation at such time as the statewide ordinance is revoked. Want to just throw that idea out there and see what people thought. So maintain our ordinance as is with the current provisions for children and everything. Don't change any of that, but just in terms of us revisiting it, instead of in 3 months, we revisit when the state ordinance is revoked. Or not.
Yeah. It just feels a little amorphous and a little bit vague. It just feels like if we stipulate a date that, I don't know. I could certainly go either way, but the date certain feels clearer.
Okay, I'm good with that.
We could, along those lines, Elise, my guess is, we're anticipating to see a winter with, increased infections, and hopefully we get that under control. But it's also potential that, you all could consider sort of extending it for, 6 months versus 3 months, which kind of, that would bring us February, March, April, kind of to the 1 year point, essentially, of when we first saw this. And this is a resolution. I know we call it the ordinance, but it's a resolution, so it's much easier for us to, quickly respond and do that at a single meeting. If in fact, by some miracle, we felt like we didn't need to have the mask ordinance within that 6 month period, or the mask resolution within that 6 month period. If you're looking to extend the time.
Yeah. David?
I feel like the quarterly conversation is appropriate. It's just a good point to touch base. It's just a valuable conversation, I think, and let's just keep addressing quarterly. That was
Is that a
my,
motion?
Yeah, so Mayor, I move that the town council adopt resolution number 37, series of 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded. It's a resolution, so this is a quiz. Is this a roll call or is this a voice vote? Roll call.
Roll call.
That was the correct answer. Roll call is the answer. Go ahead, Pam.
Okay, sure. Let's begin with Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Bill Infante.
Yes.
Thank you. Elise Hoddle.
Yes.
Thank you. Ryan Slack.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bill King.
Yes.
Thank you. David Knight.
Yes.
And thank you. And Glenn Drummond.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next order of business was scheduled to be an executive session to discuss candidates for P&Z appointment, but I understand Jeff may have some second thoughts about how we want to go about that.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was out of the office last week and didn't have a chance to fully review and advise on this issue, but under the open meetings law, appointments to fill vacancies to local public bodies should be done in open session. So rather than have this executive session, what I would recommend is council just take up the discussion of the appointments to P&Z at its next meeting, or perhaps a work session prior to that meeting to discuss the candidates. I can also work with staff about options to kind of facilitate that discussion. As I know, sometimes this discussion of appointments like that can be challenging one just to have in public, but it is a discussion that should be done in public, and the appointments, of course, should be a formal action in a public meeting. So that would be my recommendation, is to not take this up tonight, but to push that to a future meeting.
Yeah,
There are
sounds
reasons
great.
why we can't.
yeah, I think that
We want to discuss?
without the public, without the executive session, it becomes awkward to talk about the strong points and weak points of individual candidate. I don't think that's fair to any individuals to have an open debate on their, kind of individual merits. I wonder if there isn't a process that we could consider whereby individual counselors could virtually kind of fill out a little slip of paper and write down your vote for appointment to council. I assume there's only one position open right now, or are there none?
No, I would,
My understanding is there's two vacancies.
So basically what we could do is either call the town manager or call Susan, and everybody, have the sanctity of the private voting booth here and essentially vote in we could have an open discussion, but the actual voting, I don't know if that's a really cricket to have that like a totally open process. That doesn't feel fair to the candidates or to the counselors to me, so I don't know.
We have to do that.
Yeah, I guess I don't understand how that's different than
We're all
the executive
adults.
session.
Let's just go. Let's just get this done.
I have no problem.
So for the purposes of tonight, because I think that this was noticed as an executive session and not as a discussion item in front of council, that there's not an expectation that it would be a discussion in open meeting, so I would just suggest that it be taken up at the next meeting.
Okay.
And if there's and I'll review with staff perhaps a way to indicate ranking or preferences of candidates between now and that next meeting.
What if we take a simple little roll call? Please don't keep going, hey, let's pick them right now.
How about a secret ballot? Is that too,
Well, the discussion of the appointments to fill the vacancies should really take place in the open meeting, and
Okay.
of course, the action to do that needs to take place in the open meeting.
all right.
and just to kind of clarify, we'll provide to you some more background. We have 2 full P and Z positions, and, there's an opportunity potentially to do alternates. Our practice is just to do 1 alternate position, but we'll give you more information on that but that was one of the things we were going to talk about in executive session.
And so with that, I don't think that there needs to be any specific action on this item 8A, and otherwise we're at the end of the agenda, and staff can place this item on the next council meeting agenda for discussion and consideration.
So we can pick 2. Is that basically what we're going to be asked to do?
1 alternate.
2, and then if we, just a discussion about the alternate position. I think our recommendation would be to just pick 2 at this time.
All right. Do we need yard signs or any kind of campaign material here? No. We won't do that.
I can tell you the 2 I'm behind.
All right, guys, I think we've reached the end of our agenda, so thanks, everyone. We got it done before 9. This was supposed to be a short meeting, which it kind of was, I guess. So thanks, everyone. I really appreciated the discussion on everything, and we'll be around on the campus. So keep an eye out for our public service announcement on COVID, which is being taped. We have Karen Koneman and Heath Harmon are going to be here, and we're doing a little public service announcement to get everybody knuckled down. So that's an eye out for that. So if there are no further comments, questions, we're going to be adjourned. Thanks, guys.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, y'all.